I'd like to call this council and committee meeting to order. Before we proceed, I want to acknowledge that the land upon which we are located, wherever we are situated throughout our community or elsewhere, is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe people, many of whom continue to live in our community and add to the richness of life in our community. Madam Clerk, the roll call.
All members of council are present, your worship, with the exception of councillors Dubanow and Zanko.
Thank you. There is an addendum this evening. There are two new presentations and delegations under the Corporate and Community Services portion of the agenda. Gary Bergman on behalf of Linda Bergman of 370 Beechwood and Thomas R. Merkel, 365 Beechwood Avenue, both relative to the Glen Olden Lane Road Allowance. Some very brief announcements. I want to wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day. We were so busy rushing around the last few days that many of us may have forgotten this is Valentine's Day, and I'm doing my very best to redeem myself later this evening with my wife. She's not aware of that, but hopefully all of you are in good shape. I did want to mention that MIAC, the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee, had another meeting this afternoon just before this council meeting. They will be planning some activities and events, and they are looking for new members, so they'll be seeking new memberships throughout the community. It's a young, very vibrant and energetic group, and I'm really pleased to be working with them this year. The third thing I wanted to mention is we're halfway through Black History Month, and Fort Erie has an interesting connection with Black history, not only from the African Americans who escaped from the United States on the Underground Railroad, but also through the recent waves of immigration to Canada, so that we have I think a relatively large population of Black individuals, and throughout our history, they have added to what has gone on in this community. As I mentioned, the Underground Railroad, many of you are familiar with the fact that Josiah Henson, the person who we believe was the model for Uncle Tom's Cabin, crossed into Canada at Fort Erie, lived here for a period of time before he moved on to Dresden in southwestern Ontario. And of course, we've had many other individuals that have had an impact on life in our community. In 1905, the Niagara movement had one of the first organizational meetings of the group of individuals that eventually would form the NAACP. That occurred down at Waverly Beach, just off of bottom of Helena Street, where our Waverly Park is located. So I'd encourage everyone to think about that and inform themselves a bit about the Black history that has occurred here and the individuals that have a connection with the town of Fort Erie. And then finally, I just want to very briefly comment on the protest that came to Fort Erie on Saturday and Sunday. Some remnants today. I want to thank the parties that participated in managing that, in particular the OPP, the Niagara Regional Police, the Niagara Parks Police, in particular the Peace Bridge Authority, which had put together a plan for managing this. The town staff, there were a number of departments, the fire department, public works, or infrastructure services, bylaw enforcement, as well as the region, and I hope I'm not missing anyone. There were periods of inconvenience, certainly some noise. By and large, the protesters did their thing, left Fort Erie. The only regrettable part was the interruption of a number of commercial truck drivers who were trying to get to the Peace Bridge Saturday evening and were obstructed by some of the protesters who were eventually persuaded to leave about 10:30 Saturday night. Some others showed up on Sunday, and for fear of replication of what occurred on Saturday, the OPP again closed off the Queen Elizabeth Highway at Gilmore Road and diverted traffic off the highway at that point. And so the commercial truck drivers had to get off and then were directed back to Queenston, which was unfortunate. But by and large, no major incidents, and while it's frustrating for some, I guess we have to remember that we live in a democracy, and people do have the right to peacefully protest. They don't have the right, though, to obstruct individuals who are trying to make a living, trying to run a business, trying to get to places that they need to get to, and hopefully there won't be a recurrence of that at Fort Erie, although as one of the busier border crossings in the country, I suppose this is to be expected. So thank you to all of those parties, and as I said, I hope I didn't miss anyone. It was a large team effort. I was continuously briefed by a number of parties, including our fire chief and Ron Rhinus from the Peace Bridge Authority and the Niagara Regional Police. They were excellent to deal with and were available throughout the weekend. Okay. Going to move on. Are there any declarations of Canary interest? There being none, we've got some upcoming public meetings. We have the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendments, 7 Central Avenue and 100-1 Queen Street, which will take place on Wednesday. That's an open house that will take place Wednesday, February 16th, 2022. You can participate via audio, video, web, or telephone, and you can do that through Anamika Dilwaria at the town or by contacting the town of Fort Erie's telephone number, which you can get from our website. There's also an open house on Wednesday, February 23rd, proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for 125 Windmill Point Road South. And again, same routine. If you wish to connect or participate, I would suggest you contact Anamika Dilwaria at the town. And then there's, then I guess that takes us to this evening. We have a couple of public meetings this evening. The way this public meeting is going to work, which is all digital, is because this is live streamed on YouTube, members of the public who may be participating electronically in this portion of our meeting may wish to put your view on gallery by clicking at the top right corner of your device, or it could be top left corner depending on what you're utilizing. People will be muted until they're allowed into the meeting, and I don't see Aaron Butler, but I do see Mackenzie Cece. Ms. Cece, are you managing these public meetings?
Yes, I am, Your Worship.
Perfect. So the way this meeting will unfold is we will hear from a member of staff with respect to the application. We will then hear from the proponent. Then we will hear from anyone who's in support of or opposed to the application. I will also hear from the clerk in the event we've received any late registrations to be heard at the meeting. Those participating online via Zoom will be asked to raise their virtual hand when they're waiting to get into the meeting. They will be recognized by Ms. Cece and allowed in at the appropriate time. At this stage of the game, I would think that most people understand how to get into the meeting, what the various buttons on either their iPad, laptop, or handheld device might mean. Unless, Ms. Cece, you want me to give more specific information, which I think what I'll do is maybe ask you if there's anything further that you would like me to add so that those who want to get into the meeting can do so.
Your Worship, I'm not seeing anybody joining by telephone at this time, but I can provide a reminder at the public meeting portion on how they can do that if I see anyone come in. Other than that, I think you covered raising your virtual hand. Okay,
I know that there's more instructions that the clerk has provided to me. That was the Reader's Digest version. But I'm sure, Ms. Cece, that you're going to be keeping an eye on who's waiting to get in. So the first public meeting is the proposed bylaw amendment and draft plan of vacant land condominium application. This is for 3819 Hibbert Street and the easterly portion of 294 Gorham Road. We are going to hear from Ms. Anamika Dilwaria to provide us with some background information relative to this application, after which members of council, if they have any questions, may ask those questions. So good evening, Ms. Dilwaria.
Good evening, Your Worship. With your permission, could I share my screen, please?
Of course.
Thank you. An application for a zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of vacant land condominium has been submitted by Mary Lou Tanner from NPG Planning Solution, who represents Brian Keenan, owner of the subject property known as 3819 Hibbert Street and 294 Gordon Road. The purpose of the application is to facilitate 19-unit townhouse development on the subject lands. Notification for tonight's public meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act by placing a notice in January 2022 edition of Port Erie Post newspaper. In addition, property owners within 120 meters were mailed a notice of the complete application and public meeting on the same date. This is an aerial photograph of the subject lands as well as the surrounding neighborhood. The subject lands are located on the southeast corner of Hibbert Street and Gordon Road in the Ridgeway Thunder Bay neighborhood. This slide shows the location of the subject lands. As shown, the subject lands consist of two parcels, 294 Gordon Road and 3819 Hibbert Street. The owner is proposing to develop the easterly portion of 294 Gordon Road and 3819 Hibbert Street for a proposed townhouse development. The westerly portion of 294 Gordon Road will be developed in future for a commercial use. The subject lands are currently vacant. Turkstra lumber and single detached dwellings are located to the north. Lands to the south include Friendship Recreational Trail, mobile gas station and single detached dwelling. Commercial establishment is located to the east along with single detached dwellings. And Gordon Road, independent grocery store and other commercial establishment are located to the west. This slide shows a current official plan designation for the subject lands. The front portion of the property is designated commercial. The front portion of the subject property is designated commercial and the rear portion of 294 Gordon Road and 3819 Hibbert Street are designated medium density residential on Schedule A of the town's official plan and Ridgeway Thunder Bay secondary plan. The applicant is proposing to develop the portion of the property designated as medium density for the proposed townhouse development. The portion of the property designated commercial will be redeveloped in future for a commercial use. The applicant is also proposing to redesignate approximately 59 square meters of lands designated commercial to medium density residential. Section 14, subsection 14.1 of the official plan allows minor boundary adjustment for the purpose of any zoning bylaw without requiring an amendment to the official plan. As the change to the land use is minor and the lands are subject to the zoning bylaw amendment application, an amendment to the official plan is not required. The lands are designated medium density and are intended to be developed for multiple unit structures like townhouses and apartment dwellings with a maximum building height of 4 stories and a maximum density of 75 units per hectare. The applicant is proposing to construct bungalow townhouses with a maximum density of 25.71 units per hectare. This slide shows the current zoning of the property. The subject lands are zoned general commercial C2 zone. The applicant is proposing to rezone the portion of the property that's highlighted to a site-specific residential multiple 1 zone to facilitate the development of the townhouse. The requested zoning change will bring the zoning in conformity with the official plan. This slide shows the proposed development. The applicant is proposing to develop the site for the townhouse development. The proposed development will be accessed via a private road with 2 accesses on Hibbert Street. The proposal provides adequate parking spaces on site. The proposed unit will be 2 to 3 bedrooms with approximately 1,200 to 1,300 square feet in area. The units will be single story and will be divided through a condominium process. This slide shows the details of the proposed development. As mentioned earlier, the applicant is requesting to rezone the subject lands to a site-specific residential RM1 zone to allow the proposed townhouse development. I'll highlight the requested zoning departures moving from left to right. The applicant is requesting a reduction in the privacy area requirements for units 12, 13, and 14. The zoning bylaw requires a minimum depth of 4.5 meters for privacy area. Units 12, 13, and 14 will provide a privacy depth of 1.7 meters. In order to compensate the loss of privacy area for the units, the applicant are proposing to provide courtyards. So this is the courtyard for unit 12, 13, and 14 for the 3 units. The amenity space provided in the courtyard is approximately 20 square meters or 215 square feet. The bylaw requires a landscaping strip of 3 meters along the front lot line. However, due to the site layout, only 1.7 meters of a landscaping strip would be provided along units 12 to 14. However, for the remaining portion of the site along the front lot line, the width of the landscaping strip will exceed 3 meters. The bylaw requires the front yard setback of 3 meters for covered porches if the height of the porch is between 0.5 meters to 1.5 meters. For the 3 units, the applicant will be providing a setback of 1.7 meters. Bylaw requires a rear yard setback of 6 meters. However, for unit 4, the rear yard setback of 2.5 meters is proposed. The bylaw requires a rear yard setback for covered decks with the height of 0.5 meters to 0.5 meters to 1.5 meters to be provided for 3 meters. Unit 5 will provide a rear yard setback of 2.79. The bylaw requires separation distance between the end walls of 2 units to be 3 meters, but units 7 and 8 will provide a setback of 2.4 meters. The maximum lot coverage is requested to be increased to 41.5% from 40%. And lastly, the applicant is requesting a reduction in the landscaping area from 50% to 34.3%. The proposal complies with the maximum building height and parking requirements. The public information open house was held on November 18, 2021, and was attended by staff, owner, his agent, and 1 area resident. The resident who attended the public meeting has also submitted an email which is included in council's agenda. The resident requested the owner of the proposed development to provide an access to Friendship Trail via the subject property. The owner's agent has submitted a response letter, which is also included in the council report, which outlines that the connection between Hibbert Street and Friendship Trail was reviewed at the design stage for this development. Although this would improve accessibility for the area resident, it may result in safety-related concerns for the future residents of the development. The resident also requested information regarding the selling price for the proposed units, to which the applicant has responded that the selling price has not been determined yet. The resident was concerned regarding the future encroachment on Friendship Trail. The letter from the applicant's agent has confirmed that the proposed development will be confined within the property limits. Staff has also received a request to defer the current application until the town-initiated traffic study is completed. Council had requested staff to undertake a traffic study for a larger area that extends from Garrison Road in the north to Far Avenue and from Far Avenue to Crystal Beach Drive. It's staff's opinion that the traffic generated by proposed 19-unit townhouse development will have minimal impact on the existing traffic condition on Hibbert and Gorham Road, and a traffic study was not requested as part of this current application. These are some of the pictures of the subject lands, looking at the subject property, looking west on Hibbert Street, looking east on Hibbert Street, looking north on Gorham Road, looking south on Gorham Road, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dilwaria. Do any members of council have any questions? I'm going to go with Councillor Noyes and then Councillor Lubberts.
Thank you, Mayor, through you to Ms. Dilawara. And Amika, in regard to the drainage, if this is sitting right by the Friendship Trail and we've already decreased the sizes of the backyard from, forgive me, I don't know the exact amount, but I think we've decreased the size of the backyard. Where's the drainage going to go from the Friendship Trail? Because the Friendship Trail is higher than this property, if I'm not mistaken. Is it not higher?
Ms. Dilwaria?
Through your worship to the councillor, it's my understanding that the drainage from this site would, there is a swale proposed along the south property line for this, along this property. And the drainage would be contained for this subject property would be contained on site. And We have reviewed the site servicing drawings and site grading plans, and we did not come across that this would have any negative impact on the abutting properties. But this development, if it's approved, it would go through a site plan process and a condominium process, and a detailed analysis of site servicing, grading, and drainage would be done at that stage.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you for that explanation. Just a further question onto that. If the swale is going to go in the backyard, basically their backyard butting up to the Friendship Trail, how much of this reduced backyard is going to be occupied by the swale itself?
Ms. Dilwaria, would you know that?
Through your worship to the councillor, I don't have the detailed information, but only thing I could mention is that the reduction in the rear yard is only for unit 4, that small section. The remaining units would provide close to 5.3 or 5.5 meters of rear yard setbacks. So the impact on that, the reduction in the rear yard would only be for that corner unit, not for all the units along the south property line.
Thank you. That's all for now. Thank you.
Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Redekop. Anamika, when I was looking at the layout of all the units, and you were talking about the concern of the resident about access to the Friendship Trail. Just thinking about the area that's there, Hibbert Street, from Thornwood to Gorham Road, there's no sidewalk. So people, Bellevue area, Thornwood area would have to get onto Hibbert Street, somehow access the Friendship Trail. And is there a possibility to get access off of Hibbert Street without walking on the road?
Ms.
Like,
Dilwaria?
are they going to provide a sidewalk? Can they provide a sidewalk maybe between, like a path between the commercial area and the residential area or something?
Your worship, to the councillor, that we had, like, as mentioned in my presentation, the staff and the developer had reviewed to provide, if they could provide an access from Hibbert Street to Friendship Trail through this property, and that did not work through. But in future, the commercial portion of the property would be coming in for site plan development. And at that point, we can look into if a walkway could be provided from Hibbert Street connecting to the Friendship Trail. Yes, definitely, we can review that option at that stage.
Yeah, reviewing the option is fine, but you know, at that time, if they say, well, no, we can't do that now, I don't know if I would prefer to have to worry about the safety with people walking through the development on their private road, or, you know, now we got the safety of the residents that have lived in Ridgeway for years, and they're going to be inconvenienced if they don't have access and they have to walk on the road. I mean, now we're looking at the safety of those people as well. So I'd like to see that there's access there. I know it's a problem area. Maybe we could get a sidewalk on the north side of Hibbert Street, because there's already one there, and then it just dead ends at Thornwood. And if we could somehow work something out, I think I think it's better that we have something. I don't know that I want to wait and address it later, and then they come back and say they can't.
Councillor Lubberts, this is an opportunity to ask questions. We'll be getting to the report later on, and you can articulate your concern on that. Did you have any further questions of Ms. Dilwaria?
No, that's fine.
Any other councillors? So, Ms. Dilwaria, I wonder if you could go to the slide that you had that showed the concept plan and comments relative to the various modifications in zoning that were being proposed.
Sure. Yes, Your Worship, I'll quickly share my screen again.
That's it there.
Right, this one?
Yep, that one there. So just for clarity, you've got the three with the front yard setbacks, 1.7 meters. And so is there a place for vehicles to park?
For the units, Your Worship?
Yes.
So they are proposing a garages. So there would be a garage. The parking for unit 12 would be in this garage that they have, and they can park 2 cars in their driveway as well. And similarly for unit 13, they have a garage and a driveway. And for unit 14, they have a driveway and a garage.
So one of the issues that was raised by somebody that had communicated with us was that the several years ago, we made some zoning changes, trying to anticipate what developers were going to be wanting in terms of lot sizes, setbacks, et cetera, with a view to trying to prevent major requests for major changes to what we have in place. And just looking at the request here, some of these seem to be quite significant. As an example, you've indicated that minimum front yard, although the particular zoning would typically call for 6 meters to the garage, 4 meters in other parts. This one, we've got some 1.7 meter requests. Some of these don't seem to have much of a rear yard, period. As an example, I'm guessing that all of these units on the interior face to the interior, so that those units on Hibbard, that's the backyard.
That's correct, Your Worship. So these are the 3 units which have a constraint. So they don't have a backyard. The back portion would be fronting actually on Hibbert Street. And like I had mentioned, in order to compensate for the loss of privacy area, they are providing that courtyard. This is the first time that we are looking at this kind of an option to compensate for the privacy area. And regarding the first question from one of the residents when he was talking about the bylaw, so it's my understanding that he's talking about in 2014, town has passed a housekeeping bylaw to implement the official plan amendment, the secondary plan zoning for Spears High Point and Ridgeway secondary plan. And at that time, we had not touched the zoning for these lands and we had left it at commercial zoning. And my understanding is that the reason we left that as a commercial zoning was because there was an existing commercial use. So technically, by bringing this application forward, we are bringing the zoning in compliance with the official plan. But I agree with you, there are certain departures which are significant. And but in order to compensate for that loss of landscaping and amenity area, the applicant is proposing to provide these courtyards.
Right. And the minimum landscaped area, that's also significantly reduced. It's reduced by about 1/3 of what the base regulation would typically require. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And yet the maximum lot coverage is exceeding what the base regulation would be. And then the planting strips are significantly reduced from 4.5 meters to 1.7.
That's correct. Yep.
Right. Okay. I'm going to let you go in a second here. I just had, I think, one other question I wanted to ask you. In terms of the traffic study, the staff not requesting one, that is something that the council can request, though, is it not?
Yes, Your Worship.
Thank you. I think I'll, unless there's any other councillors, perhaps you could take that down now, Ms. Dilwari, and I can see if there's any other councillors that had any other questions. If not, then I'm going to, thank you very much, then I'm going to go to the proponent or the proponent's agent to provide us with further comment. Good evening, Ms.
Thank
Tanner.
you. Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Am I okay to proceed?
You are A-OK to proceed.
Thank you. I too am going to share my screen. I thank Council and Anamika for the presentation. So I'm not proposing to repeat some of the things that Anamika has shared with you this evening. I am here on behalf of the application for zoning bylaw amendment and vacant land condominium for the applicants Brockview Cottages and Brockview Building. And it is two properties, as Anamika has indicated, one on Gorham Road and one on Hibbert Street. I want to share this drawing with you, and it contains much of the same material that Anamika had shared with you in terms of the neighborhood context. Just want to note a few things for you. You can see on this drawing the property address of 3819 Hibbert Street, which is labeled parcel 1 here. And then we are proposing to take part of 294 Gorham Street and add it to the Hibbert Street property to create a larger parcel for the residential development. And the remaining portion would be commercial development. I think it's important to note as well that these sites have been historically used for industrial and commercial properties. Our clients are in the process of completing the record of site condition for both parcels, for both the commercial and the residential. So both parcels will be remediated to a residential standard, which is greater than is required for the commercial portion. This will leave a smaller commercial frontage on Gorham Road than currently exists. There is an existing vacant building that goes all the way to the rear property line at Gorham Road with parking at the rear of the vacant building. So we're providing a residential development that's going to have more connectivity with the homes on the north side of the street on Hibbert, and will also be new development that provides new housing. One other thing to note, there is a vinyl fence contractor to the east on Hibbert Street that is an existing use. And this slide gives you all of the site statistics, 0.73 hectares for the residential and 142 meters on Hibbert Street. As Anamika indicated, we are providing 19 bungalow townhouses at just over 25 units per hectare, which is consistent with the official plan designation. We'll be providing 28 parking spaces for residents and 3 for visitors, and a parking rate of 1.6 spaces per unit. I think the other thing that you can pick up here is the property is somewhat irregularly shaped. It is not square, it's somewhat trapezoidal in shape. And you can see the angles both on Hibbert and the Friendship Trail, and then the east and west property lines. We are proposing, as we indicated, the boundary adjustment, and I've put this slide up just so you can see where the current property line is for Hibbert Street and where we are proposing to move it further westward, and the amount of property that we are taking from the Gorham address, and it's 42 meters along the frontage of Hibbert Street, and you can see that it somewhat flares because of the irregular shape of both parcels. I won't spend time on this because Anamika shared this with you, but just to note that the maximum density is 75 units per hectare. We are proposing about a third of that on this particular site for the residential portion. I think Anamika has spent a fair bit of time with you on the variances, so I'm not going to take you through them again. Just want to note that in designing the site, we paid particular attention to having units facing the street and creating that street connectivity and a building wall along the street, so we're not having these larger gaps. And in some instances, we are providing single car garages as opposed to double car garages, so the internal streetscape also has a more attractive and pleasing streetscape for residents, and the garages are set back from the main part of the house so that there is not the garage protrusion within the internal condominium development. We have completed, as I indicated, environmental site assessment reports. They're in the process of being finalized and ministry clearance obtained. We did complete a functional servicing report. The swale on the property on the south part of the property line is actually on the Gorham and Hibbert properties, and it drains to an underground storage tank. In addition, the internal condominium road will have oil and grit separators for quality control. And we did complete a noise study because of the vinyl contractor to the east and some of the commercial uses on Gorham Road. There are some recommendations from the noise consultant about a fence and air conditioning and windows, which will be implemented through both the site plan and the condominium. But the noise report did indicate that this was appropriate for residential use. We are proposing, as Anamika indicated, a vacant land condominium, and this will be part of the approvals that we will be seeking, as well as the future site plan that Anamika mentioned. Just want to conclude by wrapping up with some final comments. And this slide shares with you some of the important reasons why we are requesting your support for this particular development. It is consistent with the approach to growth in the region, the province, and the town of Fort Erie in the Thunder Bay Ridgeway Secondary Plan. This does provide new housing. These are what are considered bungalows, so 2 to 3 bedrooms, 12 to 1,300 square feet in area, not exceeding the maximum height. In fact, they'll be significantly lower than the 3-story maximum height. It's an appropriate redevelopment of this brownfield, and in fact cleans up a brownfield for residential purposes. There are no servicing issues, and it makes use of the existing servicing, and we've achieved compatibility with the Noyes. And finally, I just want to reemphasize that we really are trying to create connectivity with the homes on the north side of the street and make sure that there is a really, really good streetscape and a streetscape wall along the south side of Hibberd. I'll stop sharing my screen. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tanner. Any members of council have any questions? Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Mary Lou, thank you very much. Just looking at the, you had that slide up there with the layout of the lots. And the lots between the commercial proposed portion and the residential, those units are fronting on the private street, on the private road?
Yes, they are.
And what are the rear yard setbacks on those properties?
If you'll give me a minute, I'll just look at the drawing. I believe they are about 4 to 5 meters.
And what's the requirement?
The requirement is 6 meters.
So you don't have no room back there. What about to the far end, the far west end, those properties? Same thing with their setback. Are they less than what's required?
They are both east and west ends. So for the internal facing units are 5.3 meters.
So they're less than what's required?
Yes, by 0.7 meter.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out a way to get some kind of access to the Friendship Trail. But obviously you don't have enough room. That's all.
Thank you. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Ms. Tanner. Ms. Tanner, I'm looking at the chart that we were getting in our report about the minimum rear yard, and the only one that under proposed regulations changed was unit 4. But now I'm hearing that you're not going to be meeting the 6 meter on a number of them. I'm just wondering why that's not on this chart.
Thank you, Councillor Noyes. I actually misspoke. Those east and west yards are actually side yards, so they're 5.3 meters. The rear yard is along the Friendship Trail, and it is that one pinch point that Anamika spoke of at unit 4.
So if I understand correctly, all the rear yards on all the units with the exception of 4 are going to be at least 6 meters.
They are generally about 5.3 meters along the south property line. The pinch point is at unit 4, which is 2.79 meters.
Okay. And I'm not, if I can continue, I'm not trying to nitpick here, but none of them then are going to, are any of them going to be 6 meters?
Along the south property line, no, they are all 5.3 meters.
Okay. If I can continue?
You may.
The other question is about the decrease in the planting strips. Now, in your presentation, you talked about wanting to make it look nice, have a nice feel, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're taking 4.5 meters where it abuts the street and changing it to 1.7 meters, that's about a third. How is that meeting how you described what you were trying to create from this development?
Thank you, Councillor Noyes. So part of what we are trying to do is bring the buildings closer to the street to create the eyes on the street and crime prevention through an environmental design approach, so that there is a connectivity between the buildings that are closer to the street and people who are walking on the street, cycling on the street. As Councillor Lubberts had mentioned earlier, there is a sidewalk on a portion of Hibbert on the north side. So having the buildings closer to the street does create that natural surveillance.
If I can continue,
You may.
if the minimum front yard, you're saying 1.7 meters from, I guess it's 6 meters to the garage, but you're recommending, or your proposal is 1.7. Is that for all the units that are facing Hibbert Street? Or is it just for one or two of them?
It's for 3 units, units 12 to 14.
Are there any other units facing Hibbert Street than those 3?
No, the end units 15 and 1, their sidewalls face Hibbert Street.
Okay, so the 3, if I can continue with the 3 condominiums that are facing Hibbert Street are going to be 1.7 meters from the road, right?
From the
There's
property
also-
line,
From
yes.
the property line. And are there going to be sidewalks on that, or is there how close is it going to be to the road? Because I know the town owns some of the property. How close is it going to be to the road itself, including the town property?
Perhaps I can share my screen and we can take a look at it together. So this is a blow up of the area, and you can see units 12, 13, and 14 here. Unfortunately, this is the existing center line of Hibbert Street, and this is the existing end of the pavement. So this area is not paved.
And is there a sidewalk there? There's no sidewalk there. Is there going to be a sidewalk?
Not to my knowledge. I think part of the challenge with this redevelopment, and it's similar to other circumstances, is only this property is being redeveloped. So if a sidewalk was built, it would be for this property, but then to carry it on further east where there's already existing homes and the existing vinyl contractor would be more challenging to continue the sidewalk.
One last question. I know it's coming. I'm going to be asking some more questions when the report comes. Where you have the common area, because you don't have the common areas that are, I don't know what do you call them? The courtyard, I think. I think they were referred to as the courtyards. How is that going to help number 13?
So this is the courtyard that's proposed for unit 13. This is for 12, and
Okay.
then this is unit 14. So there is one courtyard for each of those 3 units.
I'm sorry, I didn't see the one for 13. I saw the 2 on the side. Okay,
That's
thank
okay.
you.
Thank you. Any other councillors? So just for clarity then, Ms. Tanner, units 12, 13, and 14 actually face Hibbert Street?
They do have a building facade that faces Hibbert Street, but their driveway and garage is from the internal condominium road. And that was a design choice not to put individual driveways on Hibbert with garages.
Okay, let's do it this way. Where's the front door of units 12, 13, and 14?
The front door will be off the internal road through the driveway.
So these are the backs of the houses on those 3 lots that face Hibbert with, is that a porch with a roof on it?
It's
Or
a
deck?
covered porch. It's not enclosed.
Okay, so it's a deck at the back.
Mhm.
And that's what reduces the size of the setback to 1.7 meters.
Yes.
And so it's a little hard to actually discern how much of these units are house and how much are garage, but I'm guessing that the hash marked areas which show a 6-meter setback, that's driveway on the internal road.
Yes, Your Worship, perhaps if I put the blow up back up,
Right.
it might be easier to see.
So the gray
So-
shaded area, that's a driveway?
Yes, and then the garage is in behind it.
And so the front yard is, of all the units, is ranging from 3.2 to maybe 4 meters in some areas. And you've got the 6-meter setback where there's an indentation for the garage
Yes,
in
that's
some
correct.
areas. Units, yeah. Now, you mentioned that the rear yard for the properties at the east and the west end is actually the strip that would be along Friendship Trail side. I think that's what you said.
Yes. Yes, in this area. This is the south property line, it's the rear yard.
Right. But for all intents and purposes, the rear yard would be behind the unit. I would
Yes.
refer to that as behind the unit, and I think you've indicated that that's about 5.3 meters.
Yes, that's correct.
And then in terms of the property itself, I think there's going to be wooden fencing on the east, west, and south sides.
Yes, and that will be addressed through the site plan process.
So that those people on units 4, 5 to 11, and whatever the one is on the far 19. Well, I guess 19 has a fairly large side yard. Those others will have a relatively small backyard, 5 meters, and then a fence.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So in terms of access, Councillor Lubberts has raised this a couple of times now. In terms of access to the Friendship Trail, access could be permitted along either one of those roads that runs north-south, as long as there was an opening in the fence. Could there not?
That could be provided. There would need to be an agreement on how that is provided and how public access is provided.
Because those would be private roads.
That's correct.
Or there could be a requirement that access be along either the east or the west boundary. You'd have to
At this
move,
point, we're not
the houses.
proposing.
You'd have to move the units. I guess my
Yes, they'd
point
have
is,
to.
I guess my point is that there seems to be a lot of units on this parcel, hence the need for the significant changes in what would be the base regulation to basically a page of modifications. In any event, that's an issue that I can raise when I get to the report itself. You've indicated that the units will be about 12 to 1,300 square feet, and I know that there was a response by the owner relative to the selling price. There must be some idea of what the potential price range may be for these units if they proceed as planned.
At this point, I don't have that information available, Your Worship.
Please ask the owner to provide that information to staff so that they can share it with council before this matter gets to the recommendation stage.
I will do that.
Thank you. And I note as well that there had been an opinion with respect to the noise provided, but the region has indicated that it would prefer to have a bit more information regarding noise and noise mitigation. I presume the owner is prepared to do that?
Yes.
And in terms of, okay, I've got some comments with respect to traffic, which I'll raise when we get to the report. Just for clarity, I know that the letter, I believe, from perhaps you indicated that there won't be any encroachment as a result of this development. Is there an existing encroachment that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of, no. But it was a question that came up from a neighbor who lives on the south side of the Friendship Trail. So we wanted to just reconfirm that. We double checked everything and there won't be an encroachment from this development. And I don't believe there is one existing today.
Right. Okay. And then it seems to me that if this development proceeds, the water line will be extended so that there will be a loop with the line coming in from Gorham Road. Is that what I read?
That's my understanding as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Tanner. So if you could take down that, I can find out if there are any other questions. Before I go back to you, Councillor Noyes, are there any councillors that haven't asked any questions yet? Okay, Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I'm wondering if I could get Ms. Tanner to put the picture on that she just had, the sketch there. Ms. Tanner, can you show me where the planting strip was supposed to be?
Yes, you can see it in the dark green along the front. And that's approximately the width
Okay,
that would
so-
be required.
So I'm just trying to get it straight in my head here. So you're looking, and that's considered the front of the house, right? Even though it's not really, it's considered for planning purposes, the front of the house. Yeah?
It's considered the front yard
Okay.
of the development. So yes,
Okay, so so you want to reduce the planting strip that was supposed to be there from 4.5 to 1.7. So you're taking basically about 3 meters of the planting strip to basically create the front yard.
yes, that would be a good way to describe it.
Okay, thank you.
So Ms. Tanner, if there are no other members of council that have questions, I'm going to thank you, and then we'll move on to anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the application other than the owner or the owner's agent. And Ms. Cece, could you keep an eye out in case anyone raises their hand?
Absolutely, and I'll just provide a quick reminder on how to raise your virtual hands. So for those joining by a laptop, computer, or mobile device, you can do this by clicking on the icon labeled participants at the bottom center of your computer or phone screen, and at the bottom of the window that shows up, click the button labeled raise hand. And again, if there's anybody joining by telephone, you can do that by raise your virtual hand by pressing *9. So I'll just give a moment. Your worship, I'm seeing no one that wishes to speak in favor of this application.
Okay, then I'm going to ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the application.
Your worship, I am seeing one attendee, 2 attendees now with their hands raised, so I'll begin by bringing in Alan, our first virtual attendee.
Thank you. So, Mr. BC, good evening.
Good day there. How you doing?
Good. I need your full name and address for the record, please, sir.
My name is Alan Barkhouse Coolis. I live at 3830 Disher Street in Ridgeway. I was the one who was attending the last meeting in November 18th. And the comment that I have, I don't really think is against the proposal. Although, yes, it's got a lot of bylaw problems, and that's something for you guys to deal with. But, you know, my major concern is the fact that they're going to be putting together what looks like another gated community. And I always thought that Ridgeway was a friendly, open area. So I really have a problem with all of these fences going up all over the place and blocking access to all of the local residents. As Mr. Firetag, who used to own the property, would tell you, people walk through that land all the time to get to the bicycle path or to the friendship trail, if you will, rather than going all the way to the busy Gorham Road and coming back. And I don't understand why we need to block it off.
Mr. Bacchus Coolis, you've cut out on us.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry,
Yeah, we can't, unfortunately, we can't hear you. So
I'm not sure why.
I don't know if it's your volume. You're not muted, so maybe it's your volume.
It could be, hold on a second here.
No, still not hearing.
Is that any better?
Nope.
Then what I will do is,
Okay, now we can hear you.
okay, like I said, you know, my major concern is the fact that, you know, this is supposed to be a friendly community, and yet I keep hearing about criminal activities, and I'm kind of wondering why all of a sudden I'm living in a criminal mecca. Why we need all this fencing all the way around, and why we need to stop access through from Hibbard all the way to the Friendship Trail, which has been an access that's been used for people by the last 50 years. Eddie Firetag allowed the use all the time when he was when he had his business there without a problem, without an issue, and now all of a sudden these 19 units are going to be extremely unfriendly and be blocked off. Like Mr. Lubberts says, there's no reason why we couldn't have access to the Friendship Trail and let people walk through there. I don't see it as being a major issue. I can't see hundreds of people dashing through there or streaking through there or stealing things. Now, I'm not a policeman, but you know, I have lived here for over 50 years, and I have yet to see a whole lot of police presence necessary because of the drug traffic or the theft problems or the whatever other issues we've got. So I'm not sure why we need to block access to the Friendship Trail. And I'm very concerned about that in particular. As I said, you know, like my backyard opens up on the bicycle trail, and I have people all the time coming to visit by walking through that property. Now, the paved roads shouldn't be an issue, and there should be no reason why people should not be allowed access through there. You know, and Mr. Lubert has already made the comment that there are areas that would be very easily left open so that people could easily get through there at any time. Anyway, that's my concern. Other than that, I don't have any big issues.
Great, thank you very much, sir. Are there any members of council that have any questions of Mr. Varkos-Koulis? Thank you very much then, sir. Now you're muted. Okay, good night. Okay, Ms. Cece, you said there was another person that wanted to come in.
Yes, there is, and there may be a third as well. So I'll bring in our next attendee, Mr. Poole.
Good evening, Mr. Poole.
How you doing?
Doing very well. Do you have video, or are we just going to be hearing you this evening?
I don't, but let's see, start my video. Here we go.
Okay, so we need your full name and well, we can see your name, James Poole. We need your address.
3811 Red Stock Road, Crystal Beach.
Same location as before.
Yes, sir. Not
Okay.
moving yet.
Please proceed, sir.
Okay, I looked this over when I see it come up, somebody pointed out to me this. I don't understand how, first of all, how 6 meters became 5.3 meters. Like they're saying the setback, and I'm sure you agree with the same thing, like 6 meters is 6 meter, not 5.3 meters. The other point I have is, are these condos with maintenance fees?
I beg your pardon?
Are these condos with maintenance fees? Like, have an organization, they all got paid maintenance fees so much a month, or are they privately owned?
If it's a condominium, that's generally the arrangement. There are monthly fees to pay.
Well, next door to me, they're not. They don't pay maintenance fees next door to me. That I know, maybe I'm wrong. I
Maybe
could be
those are
wrong.
freehold.
Yeah, so these aren't freehold.
The ones that we're dealing with, Ms. Dilwaria, do you know the answer to that? These are condo units, are they not?
Yes, Your Worship, those are condo units, and usually the condo units would have a maintenance fee.
Right. Okay, so now the other question is hard for me because the stuff's so small here. How wide is actually the road going in there?
The
width of the road?
yeah, the concept that we've got, I believe it's 6 meters.
6 meters.
Just hold
That
on.
sound- Okay,
So let me see if I can confirm that, but I'm just looking at the map and 6 meters. The internal
is-
roads are 6 meters wide.
is that normal? That seems kind of narrow, but
For an internal road, we'll ask that when we get to the report.
okay. The other question I got, because it happened next door to me when they built the condominiums, is now it says 3 meters. Now, is that 3 meters from the property line to the house, or is it from 3 meters from wall to wall? In between the units?
Say that again.
Okay, so next door to me, when we went to OMB, what it ended up being was 3 meters to the property line, so it ended up being 6 meters total between the units. Now, this year I see I'm not sure, I don't know what the zonings are now, but is it 3 meters to the property line? Because there's gotta be a property line between each person owns. Is it 3 meters to the property line, or is it 3 meters from one unit to another unit in between?
So that's a mixed bag, and Ms. Dilwaria, can you respond to that?
Your Worship, I think it's 3 meters between the two end walls. I'll have to check the draft plan and confirm that information for you. Just give me a minute.
It appears to be 2.4 meters between the block that has units 5, 6, and 7, and the block that has 8, 9, 10, and 11. And then, as you've pointed out before, it's 2.45 meters at the west corner of that block on the west end. But these are all in the report, Mr. Poole, and the it's appendix.
No, I just want to know what the zoning law was. So it says
Appendix
it's
2, and you can relate those measurements with what appears on the graph in the report, which lists the base regulations and the modifications that are being requested. Kind of helps.
Okay, another comment, or
Go ahead.
can I go ahead?
I think the ball's in your court. You're speaking to
Okay,
us.
so the other thing, my thing is that this year we proved to be, people have these condos around here, especially like Ridgeway by the Lake, that when the snow comes, there's no place to put the snow. Now, looking at this one here, because I do clean driveways for people, and I have a snow blower, and there's no place to put the snow. And it should be thought, maybe there's too many units here. Maybe you should take 1 or 2 units out. Like next door, they had to take 2 units out. Maybe they gotta do the same thing here. But we have rules and regulations that were set forth. And I spent quite a bit of time going town council meeting that. And I was, Matt Kernahan and Kara Dose assured me that this is what they're gonna do, change the bylaws. And when somebody comes to town, say, here's the bylaws, here's those setbacks, here they are, and you fit within it, we're all happy, ready to go. And now it's changed. And that's why my disagreement is that I have no problem with somebody building something on the property. But if I was asked for all these setbacks on my property, I'm sure it wouldn't go through.
Anything further, Mr. Poole?
No, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Are there, we're going to give that a quarter's worth of weight. Any other, any questions by members of council? Thank you very much, Mr. Poole.
All right, thank you. Good night.
And Ms. Cece, you said there's a third individual that'd like to come in?
So the last individual is actually a delegate for another matter this evening.
Okay.
It's possible that they may wish to speak to this matter. They do have their hand raised, so
Okay,
I can bring them in if you'd like.
sure. Ms. Johnson, were you wishing to speak to this matter?
Hello? Yes.
I'm sorry,
Hello?
yes, did you wish to speak to this matter of the rezoning application relative to Gorham Road and Hibbard Street?
No, I'm afraid our presentation is for the property next to 365 Beechwood.
Okay, well, okay, I don't know that you appear as a delegation for that.
My husband Thomas is.
Well, okay, that's fine, and Mr. Merkel will come on later on when we get to corporate and community services. So if you're not addressing this matter, then Ms. Cece, perhaps you could let Ms. Johnson out of this particular meeting? But stand by Ms. Johnson for later.
It's our first Zoom.
Wish I could say the same. Okay, Ms. Cece, is there anyone else that has their hand up that would like to get into this particular meeting, which is the application for rezoning of the Gorham Road and Hibbard Street properties?
Your worship, I'm seeing no additional hands raised at this time.
Okay. Ms. Schofield, do you have any written information that pertains to this particular application?
I do, your worship. I have one written submission and it comes from Jeffrey Aldridge. He writes, Mr. Mayor, council members, staff, and fellow residents, thank you for the chance to present my thoughts on this development. And in particular, thank you to Carol Schofield for allowing me to enjoy Valentine's evening and presenting this on my behalf. First, I want to be clear that in general, I am not opposed to this development. I do have some specific concerns and questions. Affordable housing. It seems that affordable housing is a major concern these days. How does this development contribute to affordable housing? The agenda for tonight states that the price for these units hasn't been established yet. I am surprised that a public meeting is scheduled before this information is known. His next heading is public transportation. How much public transportation is forecasted to be required? Our buses have been replaced by on-demand vans. In talking with residents and van drivers, I understand that waiting times are often as much as an hour. What are the performance statistics for this new service and how does this apply to this development? Next heading is sanitary sewer. He has in quotes, therefore, it is expected that there is adequate capacity to service the proposed development, end quote. The above statement that it is expected is not very reassuring. Why isn't it mandatory that there be adequate capacity? What happens if there is not adequate capacity? My concern regarding this is that it's my understanding that the processing plant at the bottom, south end of Ridgeway, was or is over capacity and sewage has to be trucked out. I know this isn't applicable to this development, but can I ask that someone follow up on this statement and let me know the facts? His next heading is conformance of various plans. The last slide from the open house stated in quotes, is consistent with the PPS and conforms with the growth plan, the NROP, and the town of Fort Erie official plan, end quote. How does it conform with or meet growth targets for Crystal Beach? What is the target for Crystal Beach? Do these units contribute to meeting that target? Can you provide a simple list of all the other areas, properties in Crystal Beach with their expected number of units that contribute to that target? In his submission, there is also a heading called amendments requested, and he's identified a table which has a list of them. There are 8 amendments being requested. Those amendments break down into two categories, those that only affect people within the development and those that affect the neighborhood. His next heading is zoning bylaw amendment, and he includes the proposed sketch, which was used in the previous PowerPoints. Two major requirements for amendments are the 4.5 meter for both planting strips and privacy areas. For both the developers asking for a 1.7 meter, which is just over 1/3 of what is required. This means that the back of those houses will be 3.7 meters from the street allowance instead of 9 meters. In old language, this is about 10 feet instead of 30 feet. This should be considered unacceptable for both the people who will be living there and unacceptable to the neighborhood that houses will be so close to the street. I see no reason to reduce either. The back of those houses should be the full 9 meters from the street allowance. A 6-foot fence around the property is proposed. That means these units will have just 1.7 meters of privacy looking at a fence. The expression about not enough room to swing a cat comes to mind. Trivia alert, this refers to a cat of 9 tails, not a feline. I see that there is a front elevation for the units. Why is there no rear elevation to show what would be seen from the street, especially with the perspective of the reduced planting area? The next heading is sidewalk. Why are no sidewalks proposed to allow residents walking access to Gorham, especially when the supermarket is right across Gorham? This is a very busy street. Are residents expected to walk on the side of the road or cross over in the middle of the block to the sidewalk on the other side? Next heading is fire requirements. The internal road is 6 meters wide. In the case of fire in the most central units and we have a major storm and snow deposit, how will fire trucks get access to those units? Will parking be allowed on that driveway? Conclusion, finally, I thank council for allowing me to make this presentation and regret that I could not do it personally. I apologize if any of my questions may have already been answered prior to the reading of this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Schofield. Was there anything else that came in?
No, your worship, that was all.
Okay, then I'm going to declare this public meeting, unless there's anyone else, Ms. Cece, that you see that has their hand raised that might want to address council with respect to this.
I do see Brian Keane, who is, I believe, one of the owners.
He's the owner, so he's the
He
proponent.
has his hand raised.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'm seeing no one else.
Okay, then I'm going to declare this public meeting closed, and we're going to move on to the next public meeting, which is the proposed zoning bylaw amendments of a housekeeping nature initiated by the town. And Mr. Daryl Vanderveen is going to be providing us information with respect to this. Good evening, Mr. Vanderveen.
Good evening, Mayor Redekop, council and members of the public. Thank you. I'm going to commence sharing my screen. So thank you for joining the public meeting for the proposed town-initiated housekeeping amendment to the zoning bylaw. This is a summary of the contemplated changes. So this first slide contains the changes proposed for Section 6 general provisions of our zoning bylaw. So the first thing we're proposing are adding some regulations to permit the use of community gardens. Next, we're going to be adding some regulations regarding hardscape on lots. So that would be impermeable surfaces such as like pavement driveways and whatnot. So we'd be looking to consider limiting hardscape material on lots concerning rear yard and side drainage. Next, for 6.21 landscaping and planting strips, we're proposing to expand what can be considered as landscape open space such as green roofs. We're also looking to potentially add a minimum percentage for landscape open space in the rear yard of any residential zone. For 6.36 temporary uses, we're proposing to permit a temporary trailer for habitation during construction of a dwelling for a period of 12 months in the agricultural, rural residential, and rural zones. For 6.47 average setbacks, we're looking to add a provision for average setback in the case of a corner lot. For 650 outdoor patios associated with eating establishments and or taverns. We're considering removing restrictions on entertainment on outdoor patios. The existing setback of 20 meters to a residential zone for outdoor patios is proposed to be maintained. For 6.51 model homes in a draft approved plan of subdivision, we're looking to introduce a limit on the number of model homes based on a percentage of the total number of lots in a plan of subdivision. So these are the changes proposed for the agricultural zone and the rural zone. So for both zones, we're looking to introduce some value-added uses in accordance with the previous housekeeping amendment to the town's official plan, which added in some policy for value-added uses. And to just briefly describe those, value-added uses are secondary uses intended to enhance the primary agricultural use of the property. So just to give some quick examples, that would be roadside produce stands, pick your own fruit or vegetable operations, and perhaps special events such as on-site weddings or farm mazes. Next, for the rural zone, we're looking to add a provision that permits a minimum lot area of 1 hectare for a lot in the rural zone where the principal use is a single detached dwelling in support of the official plan's existing policy for infill severances in areas with rural designation. A minimum lot area of 0.4 hectare may be permitted if a hydrogeological study is undertaken by the applicant, which demonstrates that a private septic system can be achieved on a smaller lot than 1 hectare without any negative impacts. Next, for section 14, the residential multiple 1 RM1 zone, we're proposing to remove the minimum lot area of 4,000 square meters for block townhouses and replace it with a minimum lot area based on density permissions. So that would be units per hectare. For section 31, the institutional zone, specifically subsection 31.5, regulations for dwelling units accessory to a permitted use. We're looking to clarify zone-specific regulations for dwelling units accessory to an institutional use. For various changes to the residential zones, in a number of zones, we're looking to remove the minimum floor area requirement for single detached dwellings. So that would be in the agricultural, rural residential, residential 1, waterfront residential, and waterfront rural residential zones. We're also looking to remove the minimum floor area requirement for duplex dwellings in the R3 residential 3 zone. For commercial zones, we're looking to permit a fitness center. We have that definition in our zoning bylaw, but it's not in any of our commercial zones. So we'd be looking to add it to all the appropriate commercial zones. And finally, we're looking to do some housekeeping updates, such as section numbering, correcting incorrect cross references, typos, and grammatical errors. So in terms of where we are in the process, notice of meetings in the newspaper. The notice in the paper for the information open house meeting was placed in the Fort Erie Post on December 16th, 2021. Notice for this public meeting was placed in the Fort Erie Post on January 20th, 2022. The information open house meeting was held on January 6th, 2022. We had 1 member of the public in attendance for that meeting, but they didn't make any comments. The public meeting and information open house report to council is occurring this evening, February 14th, 2022. Following this meeting, we'll be considering input received from council, public, and staff agencies. And the next step would be staff submitting a recommendation report to council. We've tentatively scheduled that for March 21st, 2022. If that report is approved, staff would submit an amending bylaw to council for approval. That would be the end of March 28th, 2022. Following approval of the bylaw, staff would issue notice of decision. That would take place in early April 2022. Following issuance of notice of decision, there's the 20-day appeal period under the Planning Act. And assuming no appeals are received, that would place the end date of this amendment at late April or early May. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Van der Veen. And if you could unshare your screen, I can find out if there are any members of council that have any questions. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor. In regards to a few things, I'm going to start off with the outdoor patio, the setback of 20 meters to a residential zone maintained. Now, reading the report, I can recall over the years that one of the concerns of the residents has been the noise. And I hear, like in the report, it says, well, we have a noise bylaw. Well, my understanding of the noise bylaw is that, it happens between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. It's really when the noise bylaw comes into effect. Granted, you can't have a barking dog 24/7 or whatever. You can't make a lot of noise that could be very uncomfortable. But how would that prevent someone who owns a restaurant putting on their stereo equipment and things like that and just blasting? It's not.
Mr. Vanderveen.
Through Mayor Redekop to Councillor Noyes. Yeah, so as you mentioned, we do have the noise and public nuisance bylaw. I believe that's what we use to enforce sort of ongoing, like immediate issues. And we also have a section in our zoning bylaw that speaks to what we call obnoxious nuisances. So this would be any use anywhere in town that produces excessive noise or vibrations. So we do have that we can act on as well. We do plan on meeting with our bylaw enforcement staff and receiving detailed comments on their thoughts on this proposal, and we will be including that with the recommendation report to see how the enforcement side of it would be changed by this proposal.
Councillor Noyes.
Thank you for that explanation, but again, it's very subjective in regards to, like, I might like Willie Nelson and I might want to listen to it for 5 hours a day and be thrilled that the restaurant beside me in the patio is playing it. But I may not be a Willie Nelson fan and not like it. And the bylaw officer may think, well, it's just, it's Willie Nelson and he's singing really nice songs. I have a problem with the entertainment being basically, let it go, let the noise happen. I know over the years we've promised people when we've approved patios that we would not allow that. So it's just a change on what in the past we've kind of promised the neighbors who would express their concerns about entertainment on outside patios. I guess the other question I have, if I can ask another question, when we're going to remove the minimum floor requirement for a single detached, I know it goes back into, the Ontario has their own rules and things like that. What is the minimum floor area that the Ontario building code or whatever would require?
Mr. Vanderveen.
Yeah, I don't have that. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mayor Redekop. To Councillor Noyes. I don't have that value off the top of my head, but I did discuss that with Keegan Jennings, our chief building official. And any new dwelling would be subject to the minimum dwelling size required under the Ontario Building Code.
Councillor Noyes.
Yeah, thank you for that. It would be helpful to know what that requirement is. Now, I guess the question to that question would be, if there was a challenge, would we lose anyway? If our building, if our floor, our requirement was larger than what the Ontario Building Code requires, would we lose anyway?
I don't think so. Through Mayor Redekop to Councillor Noyes. If our requirement is greater, they would have to meet our requirement on top of the Ontario Building Code requirement, because they have to comply with zoning to be issued a building permit. So what this would do if we remove these minimum floor areas is it would allow smaller homes and make it easier to develop in certain zones where the current zoning requires a relatively large side floor area size for a new dwelling. Usually it's between 1,200 and 1,500 square feet. So in essence, it adds in a little bit more flexibility into the zoning bylaw for different dwelling sizes. Because in most cases, any floor area size would be larger than, in our zoning bylaw, minimum floor area size would be larger than the minimum required by the Ontario Building Code.
Councillor Noyes.
Thank you for that.
Anyone else? So, Mr. Vanderveen, the elimination, so which we were just talking about this, the elimination of a minimum lot area, 14.3, that would also facilitate, would it not, the construction of smaller homes on smaller lots?
That is correct.
And that's kind of designed to try to facilitate more affordable housing, I presume?
That is correct.
And I see the head planner shaking his head, yes. The other thing I wanted to ask you about is the change to 6.21 regarding landscaping and planting strips. So I see that part of your landscaping can be allocated to some hitherto unrecognized things like green roofs. So this is a kind of an effort to become more progressive in recognizing and promoting, I suppose, green space on lots. Is that what this is directed at?
Yes, that is the intent.
And then the second sentence in that box makes reference to add a minimum percentage for landscaped open space in the rear yard of any residential zone. What's the rationale behind that?
It's kind of tied to green infrastructure, but there's, the thought is if we require a minimum amount of landscaped area, it'll help ensure there's a permeable area on a property for water to drain, as opposed to right now where, for example, if you own a residential dwelling, you can completely pave the entire rear yard of your property. So the thought of this would be to at least have a minimum area where amount of area that drainage can still occur without people coming in after the fact and paving their property and potentially causing drainage impacts.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Van der Veen. Are there any other questions by members of council? If not, then obviously because this is town initiated, the town is the proponent of the proposed amendments. Ms. Cease, I'm going to go to you to see if there's anyone who wishes to address council with respect to these proposed housekeeping amendments. And if so, please raise your hand now, and Ms. Cece can permit you into the meeting.
Your worship, I am seeing one individual with their hand raised, so I'll be bringing in Casey.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Marzek. So I see that you're unmuted, and do you have video, or are you going to be addressing us without video? Good evening, and we do need your address, Mr. Marzek, but we're not able to hear you. So there must be a video problem. Maybe you haven't got your audio engaged.
How about now?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, good.
So we need your address, full name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Casey Marzik. I live at 4068 Erie Road, and we also operate our business, Mabel's Gourmet Pizza, at 4868 Erie Road as well.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So I'm specifically addressing 6.50 as well, which is the outdoor patios associated with eating establishment and or taverns. And currently, the town staff report recommends the removal of restrictions on entertainment on outdoor patios. And in Appendix 1, the draft amending bylaw, Section 8 states that subsection 6.50A of bylaw number 12990 as amended is deleted. So this is the part of the bylaw that specifically addresses entertainment on patios. And what this will do if this change goes ahead is that it'll change from that situation where currently no entertainment on patios is allowed to one where entertainment is allowed essentially with no restrictions at all. And entertainment would be allowed to be played literally 24/7 all hours of the day. If the change goes ahead as outlined, then the excess noise as mentioned will strictly fall under the town's current noise and nuisance bylaw. And Councillor Noyes sort of alluded to this. The problem with the noise and nuisance bylaw is it states the noise cannot be unreasonable. And it's that word unreasonable that makes this bylaw subjective and difficult to enforce. I'm of the opinion that it should be black and white. There should be a time restriction put in place, for example, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. that would allow for entertainment. This way, it's cut and dry, and there's no need for anyone to interpret what is reasonable or unreasonable. I did suggest this restriction to staff, but in the staff report, they said, and I quote, "Staff are of the opinion that any outdoor patio that causes undue impacts on nearby residences can be adequately mitigated through bylaw enforcement," unquote. But we have personal experience that this doesn't actually work. Because of COVID-19, we had the Ontario Reopening Act, and this superseded the town's bylaws and actually allowed for entertainment to take place the previous summer. And the problem isn't with the bylaw or bylaw enforcement. They were very helpful. The problem is with the chronic bylaw offenders who basically ignore bylaws or constantly push the limits. Again, officers don't operate late night when noise is usually louder. Many times bylaw will show up, music is turned down, but then goes back up hours later or the next day. A lot of times at the end of the night, and again, I'm speaking of our own personal experiences here, music is turned up at the end of the night, bylaw is called, the establishment is closed by the time they arrive. So the situation isn't corrected. And this is something that was experienced on an ongoing basis all summer and into the late fall. And I do believe that this could all be avoided if strict time limitations are put in place, making it much easier to enforce. They're very similar to the time restrictions that are in place for construction. There is a definite time where construction is allowed, and this is well known in the construction industry, and there are rarely any problems because it's cut and dry. And I believe that this should be the same for entertainment on patios. So that's basically all my comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marzak. Do any members of council have any questions of Mr. Marzak? If not, thank you very much, sir, for your comments.
Thank you.
Ms. Ceci, do you see anyone else who wishes to address council with respect to this particular application?
Your worship, I'm seeing no additional hands raised at this time.
Okay, then I'm going to declare this public meeting closed. And that, I'm sorry,
Mayor?
Madam Clerk, there was something that you received in writing on this?
Yes, there was, your worship.
I'm sorry, thank you.
This comes from Vicky Karanidis. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. To whom it may concern, my name is Vicky Karanidis, and I'm currently a resident in Stevensville at 3100 Ridgemount Road. I am writing in regards to the proposal of amending the town's comprehensive zoning bylaw 129-1990 as stated in the Fort Erie Post dated January 20th, 2022. I truly believe the proposed changes reflect a positive, progressive approach which is in line with the town's vision to be a growing and prosperous community. Currently, there are no revisions or adjustments I would like to voice and find the proposal to be steps in the right direction to foster economic growth within Fort Erie. If you would like to contact me, please feel free to do so, and she provides her email address and her phone number. Regards, Vicky Karanidis.
How do you spell her last name again?
Karanidis.
Thank you. Anything further, Madam Clerk? Okay, then now I'm going to declare this public meeting closed, and then we're going to move to the consent agenda. Are there any items that anyone wishes removed from the consent agenda? If not, can I have a mover for the reports and the recommendations? Councillor Mcdermott, I see. Are there any questions or comments with respect to any of these reports? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I have a few reports. I'm going to start with the PDS 05-2022, the draft plan approval for Ellison Woods subdivision. I notice in the report they're talking about a stormwater management pond again. and gating it, like putting up a fence around it and things. And I'm hoping that we don't keep going in that direction. I think we should be making the stormwater management ponds an asset, not an eyesore. And since we're in the planning stages, I would strongly encourage them to make it more of an asset than a fenced-in pond. I think we need to get away from that. I think it's a lost opportunity if we let that go forward. So that's the one on that. Then on IS-05 2022 about the annual water quality report and annual water utility summary report. I wanted to mention, and I did have a chance to talk to Mr. Walsh earlier today about all the hard work that his team does do and how we're always coming up almost with an A+ average, which is great, that the water is very safe, but also was very impressed in regards to a leak detection that occurred a few, I won't give a timeline, it didn't happen that long ago, but I'm wondering, I was really impressed with how we now have this technology that helps us detect a water leak and how it improves our system. And I'm wondering if Mr. Walsh wants to explain that. It's interesting.
Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the 2021 capital budget and the 2022 capital budget, Council approved the purchase of instruments that are inserted into our hydrant system. And through the magic of acoustics and computer stuff, beyond my understanding of how it works, we're able to recognize when leakage in the system is probably occurring that wasn't there before. In January, we installed the first 2 units on this, and I think the second night they were installed, we determined that we probably had a leak somewhere in between 2 units, and we were able to identify it before the public called in to let us know there was a leak, which usually happens.
Councillor Noyes.
Yeah, I think that's really amazing to be able to find a leak before it actually becomes visible through this new technology. I guess the last question I have is on report number FES-01 2022. It's about the Fort Erie Department, Fire Department. And in that report, it talks about the inspections, the number of inspections that were done, which were considerable. And I recall that recently in our budget, we supported a request for another individual in regards to short-term rental inspections, that there's going to be, that it was just going to overwhelm the current personnel we have for inspections, for fire inspections, and also for building. And I'm just wondering how that's going to work if we're already doing so many fire inspections, and how this person or persons are going to fit into this.
So that might be 2 different areas, but Chief, this is a fire report. It's an excellent report, one of great encouragement. The number of new recruits that you've got this year is, again, truly astounding. Municipality this size would have so many individuals willing to volunteer for this service. But to get to Councillor Noyes' question, does the new budgeted inspector assist the fire department with its inspections?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Noyes. I don't know how to answer the question yet. We've had several meetings, HR, building, EDTS, and of course myself, discussing the job description for this position and the duties that are required. Right now, we are looking at the position to be mostly administrative with support from building and fire. We're not the job description is not complete yet. HR hasn't helped us or hasn't put that together yet, and we haven't finalized it. Once we do that, council has everyone's assurances that we will update you on how that looks so that we can understand where it goes. What we're trying to do is use the resources that we have in a time where we're not quite sure how it's all going to come together and work. As Councillor Noyes has indicated, it could be a very large project or a very large program, but we're unsure of how it's really going to come together. So I hope I'm answering the question by saying that council will be notified of how this is going to look. We're just not quite sure yet how that pans out.
Councillor Noyes, back to you.
No, I appreciate Mr. Mendelson's explanation. I did have a chance to talk to him earlier about that. And I was just wanting to ensure that we weren't trying to overtax his current staff because they're doing so many inspections already. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Mr. Walsh, I can also tell you that I thought the Fort Erie Water Distribution System report, which Councillor Noyes has commented on, was also excellent, and the results are really excellent, and people in Fort Erie should be very pleased that they've got such high quality water coming out of our water taps. So congratulations to your team on that.
Thank you.
I had a couple of questions with respect to the extension of draft approval for Alliston Woods. My understanding, and I don't know whether there's anyone here that would know this for sure, my understanding was that the agreement of purchase and sale regarding the parcel of land necessary to do the Craft Road extension was agreed upon last year. It sounds almost as if this transaction has not yet been completed. Mr. Hurlowich, I hate to put you in this spot because you may not be familiar with this file yet.
Well, excuse me, thank you, Your Worship. I do know the land that you are referring to for the Craft Road extension. I cannot confirm whether or not the land has actually been acquired, but we're really talking about the draft plan approval at this point, so they would not be able to get registration for the plan of subdivision. So that will be a requirement before they can move ahead with development.
And I see that they've indicated that this road extension will be part of phase 1 of the development.
That is correct.
I had another question that you may be able to respond to, and it's on page 26 of the report. It deals with the deletion of condition 48, which I think deals with sidewalks. Well, it says sidewalks, but I didn't see any place else in the draft conditions where there was a reference to sidewalks, but I may have missed that. My concern is if this is my concern is if this is removed, do we end up with no sidewalks in the subdivision?
Yeah, I believe what's being removed is that the sidewalk be installed within 1 month of occupancy, but I can double check on that.
Yes, please do.
We could make a deadline revision to that if it's other than what I'm telling the council now.
Right. Okay, that's great. And then finally, is there a need for there to be a condition with respect to where the signalization of the one point of access or egress from this subdivision is going to be? In other words, there's one point of access egress at Spears Road in Garrison. There'll be this second one. Is there a need for there to be an indication in the conditions of approval that one of these needs to be fully signaled?
Yes, that I cannot answer. Don't know whether there's anyone else on staff would be able to address the signalization.
Okay, that's great. And then I had just with respect to, Mr. Walsh, maybe you can help me with this. With respect to the report IS 04-2022, which dealt with the High Street water main replacement and some additional stormwater work that's being done. So the request for an extra $63,000 to be put into the budget from the stormwater or storm refurbishing reserve, that looks to me like it increases the amount of money available for this project to beyond what's required. And is the suggestion then that whatever work is done, when it's completed, if there's a surplus, it will be returned to whichever of the reserves that surplus would have come from, the money would have come from in the first instance?
You're exactly right, Mr. Mayor. Right now, the storm works proposed and the tender prices exceed what the stormwater reserve is contributing to this project. So it's just a top up in that component.
Okay, and that will be part of when we get the report about surplus funds from projects and whatever, that'll be part of that. Okay, thank you. I have no other questions. Does anyone else have any questions? If not, I'm going to call the question on the reports in the consent agenda. All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried. That then takes us to Planning and Development Services. And in the absence of both the chair and the vice chair, I will chair this part of the meeting. So there are no presentations or delegations. And the first report is the proposed draft plan of vacant land condominium 3819 Hibbard Street and the easterly portion of 294 Gorham Road. Councillor Butler, you're moving that? Okay, that's on the floor. Did you have a question or comment? Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm actually opposed to this development as it is, and the request that they have. I mean, I think it's intriguing that they're going to be turning that brownstone, I guess, or the brownfield, I forget what you call it.
Brownfield.
Brownfield, thank you, into something, that's going to be workable for our area. But I have some concerns, as the other councillors mentioned, and you mentioned during the question period in the presentation. And one of the things that I have a problem with is that there aren't going to be any sidewalks. And I also feel that we're stretching the amount of homes that they're building on there. I just don't feel comfortable with it. So I'm not going to, I know we're accepting it for information purposes, but I'm opposed to some of the proposed regulations.
So that's good to know, Councillor Butler, and you're right, this is an information report. I would just remind members of council that the last time we turned down an information report, we ended up with an appeal. So let's try and be more strategic this time around. Any other members of council? Councillor Noyes, and then Councillor Lubberts.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I'm concerned in regards to the intensity of it. We're taking, I'm going to the chart here on page 5 of 12. Now, it's unique in regards to, the way that they're putting the front yard is really not the front yard, but the rear, but anyway, it's interesting. But they're taking the planting strip, they're asking for a variance for the planting strip, basically decreasing it to 1.7. We're talking about the Hibbard Street, that, and then which basically they're taking away almost not 2/3, but a fair amount of the planting strip, which if they had to do it, there would be no front yard at all, because the planting strip would basically be on the front porch of the house. I find it interesting that they want to have a reduced lot frontage onto Hibbard Street, and it's the same place that they're asking for a reduced planting strip. So they're basically using the planting strip that they're asking us to not ask them to do it, and making it, anyway, I think you know where I'm going with this. It's just, I just can't see that that's a good idea. I think there's too many units going on this piece of property, and I think there's a reason that we do want the planting strip there. I think visually they're going to have the town property, which is the people are going to assume and probably treat as their front yard, when in actual fact it's not. And they're basically not wanting to put in the buffer, because if they did, then they wouldn't have any front yard. So I have a problem with that. I think they need to perhaps do fewer units on this part. And the other thing, I don't know, like a few months back, we were talking about employable lands. And we had, some members of council had a problem with someone taking a commercial area and wanting to revert it to residential. And we were concerned because we were basically taking away employment lands. Now, I understand that the front commercial part is going to stay, but it's going to be considerably reduced. So to me, that means that there is potential that you may have for commercial enterprise there is also going to be reduced. Like if I was looking for a larger piece of property, this may be the right place, but now you're really limiting what can go there, because you're almost cutting in half the amount of commercial property, which means basically you're decreasing employment lands. I think that's probably it. I think they've answered most of my questions before, but I do have some concerns about the front yard and about the planting strip, and the fact that there's no access to the Friendship Trail. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Noyes. Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Listening to the other two councillors, I have to agree that I don't know that I don't know that I could support what they're proposing here, but I'm going to say what I've been saying for a long time. Another case of, putting 5 pounds of sugar in a 2-pound bag. Here we go again. They're asking for every setback to be reduced. Yet, I haven't heard anybody say, well, we'll try to accommodate a sidewalk, so we could have access to the Friendship Trail. And Mayor Redekop, we've been talking in this community to create a walkable and bikeable community. And, if we're not going to be providing sidewalks in our subdivisions and providing additional sidewalks where we already have sidewalks for walkable and bikeable pedestrians, we're just defeating our purpose. Now, maybe the town can come along and put a sidewalk from Thornwood to Gorham Road. And I know there's a lot there in the corner, but then the rest of it goes into the parking lot at Turkstra. But I would assume that we would still be on our road allowance, considering that the sidewalk east of Thornwood, I'm assuming, is on our road allowance. But I would ask that maybe staff could sit with the developer and just take a look at what you've got there. And maybe you need to reduce the amount of units that you're proposing. And my suggestion would be to, on the east and west sides, remove 1 unit on each. And then take the 4 units or the 3 units on Hibbard Street that are fronting onto Hibbard, remove them, and then take your your southern two blocks and center them onto the, bring them up closer to the center of the property. You're going to take away some of your units, but I'm not here to maximize their profits. I'm here to provide suggestions as to what would work best for the community. Because we've got a lot of residents that have lived here all their lives, and they're going to be they're going to have to go out of their way now to get to the Friendship Trail. It's going to be all fenced in. And I'm sure that some of these units will put their private gateways to the Friendship Trail that no one else can use. And yeah, I can't see that we just throw away all our setbacks and allow this to go on. And I think they need to take it back and redesign the whole thing. I'm sorry you're gonna have less units, but that's what you got to work with.
Thank you, Councillor Lubberts. The only other councillor is Councillor Mcdermott. Did you have any comments on this?
Well, Your Worship, I tend to agree with the other three councillors on their concerns, and I hope that, you know, the developer is listening, because we all have pretty much the same concerns at this point.
Thank you very much. I'm going to try to, Ms. Dewar, try to give you a little bit more guidance with respect to this. So the issue of the sidewalk, that is something that the municipality can require, can it not?
Your Worship, I checked with our development coordinator. We have a policy to acquire, to get new sidewalks, but that is for the newer subdivision. Because in this situation, the road is existing, the municipal road is existing, I don't think we can require a sidewalk, like from a policy perspective. And maybe Mr. Walsh can help me here, but that's my understanding.
Yeah, Mr. Walsh, there have been developments in the past where we've required sidewalks across the frontage.
I think, I don't know is the answer, but I don't think we do for infill lots such as this.
Well, a lot of the subdivisions are infill. We've got one that we dealt with that's all semi-detached homes on Dominion Road. I know we specifically required a sidewalk there, but I'll leave that with staff. We don't need to get into that debate. What about, Ms. Dilwaria, the ability of the council to impose a condition that says there will be no short-term rental of any units constructed on this site?
Your Worship, we can definitely definitely include that condition. Yes, absolutely.
And we can request a traffic study if we feel that's appropriate?
Yes, Your Worship.
My concern on this wouldn't be so much that this specific body would need a traffic study. It's the whole, and I think maybe the owner has missed that. It's the fact that there's so much development taking place in Ridgeway, in Crystal Beach. The only real point of access to and out of Crystal Beach is Gorham Road, Ridgeway Road, back to Stevensville Road. And so that's the concern, because we're going to have an increasing flow of traffic. So it's not any one development. It's not the gas stations on either side of Gorham, the end of Disher. It's the developments that are taking place in Crystal Beach. The developments are also taking place in Ridgeway. So hence the concern about traffic. So I think there should be some component, in my view, with respect to that. Based on the region's requirements, Ms. Dilwari, I presume that there will be some noise study, further noise study done with potential mitigation measures.
That's correct, Your Worship. That would be, they are requesting as a part of draft plan approval, as a condition of draft plan approval.
Right. And let me just ask, so this is a new plan of subdivision, and do we have the ability to require that there be, well, first of all, I suppose we can make the decision that any fence that is erected around portions of this plan of subdivision have an opening to the Friendship Festival. We can require that, can we not?
We could require that.
We could also require, could we not, that there be a dedicated walkway to the, across these lands to the Friendship Trail?
We could request that. I would say we could require that, and maybe Mr. Hurlovich can speak to that. I believe we could require that, but there has to be some easements or some agreements would have to be in place for the residents to access that walkway. So there has to be some agreements which have to involve that that accessibility on a private property for the residents.
Yes. So, Mr. Hurlovich, can we require that a strip of land be dedicated to the municipality? In order
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, so to elaborate on Ms. DeWollier's comment, the subdivision, in this case a condominium, but it is a subdivision plan, is required to provide 5% parkland dedication. The recommendation to this point is to take cash in lieu of parkland, but we could require that the land be dedicated in the form of a walkway or a strip of land dedicated to the town, extending from Hibbard to the Friendship Trail in lieu of taking money. So we could take land in lieu of money. They would, as some of the council members have already alluded, necessitate then redesigning their development.
Right, and that gets me to I guess to that particular point, but before I get there, let me just ask about the fence. It seems counterintuitive that you would have property backing onto a recreation trail and you'd want to fence it off. Some people have done that along the recreation trail, but many people along the recreation trail have actually left their property open, or they've maybe erected a frost fence of something of that nature. Is there anything that we can do in terms of what kind of fencing might be erected, if fencing is going to be erected? And Mr. Hurlovich, I'll ask you that.
Yeah. So we could look into requiring a specific fence type, but I'm not sure that's a normal practice. I would have to look at the city's procedural bylaws to see whether or not we actually require a fence to surround the multifamily residential development. That is very typically a requirement. And specifying the kind of fence, we do that obviously for our stormwater ponds. I know Councillor Noyes has already voiced her opinion on that, but we do specify a black chain link fence. So we do it for certain elements. I'm not sure that we couldn't extend it for something beyond stormwater pond.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Hurlovich. The concern that I have would be the same as the other councillors. This seems, and Councillor Lubberts, I was at a function recently with your brother, and he used that same analogy, the 5 pounds of sugar in a 2-pound bag. Is that a family story?
It's a Dutch thing.
It must be. And I'll bet you keep trying to get those 5 pounds into those 2-pound bags.
Yeah, we know a lot about potatoes.
Okay. So my concern would be that this seems to be too many units on a fairly small parcel and trying to accommodate many things. I would have thought this might be a great location for smaller homes that might really actually address some of the need in the community for smaller homes. 1,200 or 1,300 square feet, they're smaller than a lot of the houses that are being built right now, but maybe something of a smaller nature could be accommodated on this. I found it interesting that we've got a housekeeping amendment application to provide for better landscaping of units, and here we've got this subdivision which is trying to minimize the landscaping, which seems to be counter to where our policies are going, and B, counter to what I think we're trying to accomplish in the community. So I hope, Ms. Dilawari, this gives you an idea then of what the councillors are concerned about here, and hopefully gives the owner an indication of the concerns that we've got. I mean, this is a substantial departure from what one would expect to be base regulations, and it may be that there's a place for something of this nature. It seems like the councillors are pretty much of a mind that this is too much on this parcel. So are there any other, Councillor Noyes, you had your hand up as well. Go ahead, and then Councillor Lubberts.
I just wanted to comment at that, I think it was in the report somewhere, that we always associate smaller units with affordability. And I'm sure that there is some truth to that, but there's no guarantee that these units are going to be affordable. And on top of that, with the condo fee that's going to be attached, I think that may bring it outside the affordability for many people. And I'm surprised that the developer hasn't really kind of weighed in that, say, well, we haven't figured that out yet. To me, that means no, they're not going to be affordable, because I think if he thought they would be, he would be letting us know about that. But at the same point, just kind of like putting that out there that, you know, the smaller they are, the more affordable they'll be, kind of, well, then maybe we should give them, waive all these, approve all their variances, because, you know, we're going to have something affordable without any guarantee at the end of the day that after we've approved all these variances and we've the setbacks, et cetera, that we find out that the units aren't affordable and that the condo fees are to the point that, you know, the people who are trying to help can't afford these. That's all.
Councillor Lubberts, and Councillor Butler, did you have your hand up as well? Okay, Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Just to comment further on the sidewalk issue. Is there not a possibility, and I guess maybe I should direct this to Mr. Walsh, that the town could extend the sidewalk on Hibbert Street from Thornwood to Gorham Road?
Mr. Walsh?
Thank you. We could through a capital project. All the money we have right now is dedicated towards maintenance of the existing system.
Yeah, no, the reason I asked that, Mayor Redekop, is because I know in the past, and it wasn't just recently, in the past maybe 8 or 10 years, we did put sidewalk on Gorham Road at the mobile gas bar that they talked about, and they cut the asphalt and put a concrete sidewalk and linked that sidewalk to they brought that right straight through their parking, or their parking lot, I guess it was called, to at least the Friendship Trail. I think it goes right to right in front of right to Hibbert Street. And I think that was town initiated. So if that could happen, I'm just looking at the drawing that they have there. I guess it was appendix 2 of the report. And if you look at the corner lot on Thornwood and Hibbert, the rear property line doesn't seem to line perfectly with the property line across the street where they want to extend this residential area. And I'm just wondering if right at that property line, if they could put a laneway right there between that property line and the commercial portion that they're proposing, and have that there link into the the Friendship Trail. And I don't know that it's asking too much for the developer, because if you look at what they're asking for with all the setback changes, they're asking for a lot from the town. And I'm not hearing that they're willing to give up anything. That's just my comments.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? If not, then this is an information report. I'm going to call the question on the information report, receiving the report for information purposes. All those in favor? Oh, that is carried. Okay, that then takes us to the proposed housekeeping amendments. Do I have a mover? Councillor Butler. Are there any questions or comments with respect to this report? Councillor Butler and then Councillor Noyes.
Yeah, this wasn't always on my mind, but I do like Willie Nelson. I just want to let Councillor Noyes know that. So I did want to speak to point 6.5. I don't know that we collectively, told the neighbors that if we allowed an open outdoor patio, there wouldn't be any entertainment. Maybe it was just a thought, but I certainly didn't promise that. And I just wanted to say that most patios do have entertainment, whether it's live or just music out on the patio. I think that's what makes the environment come alive, certainly down in that area. But I do agree with Mr. Marzik in that perhaps there should be time restrictions so that everybody knows that it's to that certain point in the evening that it has to be turned off. That's my 2 cents. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Noyes.
Thank you. Now that we know that Councillor Butler likes Willie Nelson, that's good to know. He's a pretty soft-spoken, anybody can listen to his music for hours at a time and not be disturbed, I would think. But it may not be Willie Nelson, it may be rap music or something, very loud, or sometimes music that you really wouldn't want your children to hear. Some of the words and things. I agree that there should be some entertainment, that there should be some guidelines, but there needs to be more guidelines instead of just that the only thing we're going to do is call the bylaw officer, because exactly like Mr. Poole said, by the time they get there, they've turned it down or they're closed, and as soon as they leave, they turn it back up, or the next day it's the same problem. It's repeat offenders. So I'm not quite sure whether we can do this through a licensing requirements. In other words, it's almost like a demerit point, like we're doing for the short-term rentals. I don't know if something like that can be thought of, because I do remember, and I think it was before Councillor Butler was on council, it was many years ago, that we did have a few. I think there was one on Dominion Road. I think Mayor Redekop, I think you were the mayor at that time, and I don't know if you remember the one on Dominion Road that we had some concerns about with the outdoor patio and the residents being concerned what it would do to their to their enjoyment of everyday life if there was a lot of music. And we did put a lot of restrictions on when they couldn't play. But I do think we have to do more than just it's a bylaw. There has to be some demerit points. There has to be some control over this. Nice quiet music, wonderful, but if you're having it, and how loud it's going to be, like I wouldn't want to be living beside someplace that from 7 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock at night they can play music nonstop. I don't think it's fair to the residents. You're talking about a 20-meter setback, which is what's about 60 feet. I just don't think it's fair in a residential. If it's in the middle of a residential area, I think each place, like, okay, Derby Road's a bit different. There's not that many. It's a commercial area. It adds to the ambiance, and the residents are a little further away from that because most of the areas are commercial. But again, we also have these places that are in a residential area. I just think we need more than just say we're going to let bylaw deal with it, because I just don't think that's sufficient. So I'm not going to be supporting it the way it's written currently. I think we need to come up with some method to control that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Yeah, I think we went over that, this thing with the patios and the entertainment. Maybe Mr. Vanderveen can just remind us of what was the end result of that. We did say that they could have the entertainment, but when it comes to the noise, and this is just referring to what Councillor Noyes was talking about. If I will like one type of music, I might think, well, that's not that bad. But if I don't like it, then it's like, no, that's excessive. But I think we said something about the decibels. So it's not a matter of what it is. It was the decibels of the music. If I remember correctly, I don't know if it was implemented or not, but that was some of the discussion. Maybe Mr. Vanderveen can, if he remembers.
Mr. Vanderveen, can you help us out?
Through Mayor Redekop to Councillor Lubberts. Not to my knowledge, but I'll do some research on the background of previous research into this type of thing, and we'll include that in the recommendation report.
Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you. Well, I know we talked about it, so you might find it in the minutes of the meetings that, and I think it was the when we were discussing the patio at the restaurant at the corner of Erie Road and Schooley. They wanted to add on and extend their patio and have some live entertainment. So, you know, I think we, but with the regulations, you were saying in here, a minimum lot area of 0.4 hectare may be permitted if a hydrological study undertaken by the applicant demonstrates that a private septic system can be achieved on a smaller lot. So you're saying that you're proposing that we allow the septic system to be on a 0.4 hectare lot? And how would that be achieved based on, my understanding is the reason it's a hectare now is because that's what's required in order for that septic system to work.
Mr. Vanderveen, can you comment on that? And 0.4 hectares is approximately what we would have known as an acre?
Yeah, that is correct. Thank you, Mayor Redekop. To Councillor Lubberts. So this proposal is in line with Niagara Region requirements. So on a basic level, they do permit some infill severances in the rural area. And sort of as a standard, 1 hectare is the requirement. However, they can support up to, or a reduction down to 0.4 hectares, which is an acre, provided a hydrogeological study is required, is submitted, and it demonstrates that that lot size will work without any negative impacts. So it's just sort of building the region's requirements into our zoning bylaw. Any new lot creation would be subject to regional review, including from a septic perspective.
Councillor Lubberts?
Okay, thank you. And then when you were talking about the green space and gardens, and you were saying that you could have your green space, like green roofs. Can you explain that a little bit better, how that would work?
Mr. Vanderveen.
Yeah, through Mayor Redekop to Councillor Lubberts. We haven't seen this type of development here in Fort Erie yet, but a lot of sort of green type development will actually have vegetation on top of the roof, and that's to collect stormwater as well as provide some amenity space potentially on what's normally just like an open roof area that's unused. So it adds some ability to add additional landscaping features on a site that would normally just be considered to be a building. And still add some benefits, again, such as stormwater management and some amenity space on top of the structure as opposed to being on the land only.
Councillor Lubberts?
So I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. So basically you'd have to have a flat roof. And you're saying that you could put some type of vegetation up there to take in water. And then that would alleviate the amount of water that is going into our drainage system.
I don't think that's what he's, I don't think that's what he's saying at all.
Yeah, how do we ensure that that's what will be maintained on the dwelling unit forever?
Mr. Van der Veen, can you provide us with any insights?
Yeah, I would just say we would review that through the development process and through site plan control. As we don't have any developments ongoing right now, it's sort of hard to say, but we would take a look at that through the development process.
How are the other communities doing it, you know?
Mr. Van der Veen?
We could certainly look at some area municipalities in Ontario and provide some analysis for you in the recommendation report.
Councillor Lubberts?
Yeah, because my concern with all of that is my experience with flat roofs. Over time, people find out that if they're not maintained properly, that there's a lot of problems with them. And my problem that I have with going this route is if a property owner decides, you know what, I gotta do something with my roof because the vegetation portion of it's not working out, it was leaking, I got things that are rotten, so they replaced their roof with a peaked roof. And now we have a dwelling unit with a peaked roof on it that we allowed them to build it because it was understood that their green space would be on the roof. And I have a problem that we'll be able to, first of all, enforce it, and then secondly, monitor it. So I don't know that I would necessarily agree with that.
Councillor Lubberts, we'll have to see what the wording of the change would be and what would be included in the zoning bylaw, and that might give us a better understanding of what's being proposed. It doesn't necessarily have to be a flat roof to be a green roof, but your comments, I'm sure, are being noted by Mr. Van der Veen.
Is there any other green roof that's not flat? Maybe you can let me know what that is.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, I don't know how you would maintain the water on a slanted roof.
Anything further, Councillor Lubberts?
Not at this time, no.
Anyone else? Before I go back to Councillor Noyes, Councillor Mcdermott, did you want to weigh in? No. Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I'm just wondering in regards to the outdoor patio, because I want to support the report. And I'm just wanting, anybody can ask for relief from the bylaw, right? Like currently, like if I had an eating establishment and I had a patio and I wanted live music, I could come to council and ask for relief to the bylaw.
Well, if it's a zoning bylaw, it's a zoning amendment. That's how you get the relief.
But I could ask for that, right?
You could ask for an amendment to the zoning bylaw. Correct.
And that way the neighbors who are adjacent or might be affected by the patio and the music that the person wants to ask for the zoning amendment to do would then be notified and could weigh in this particular circumstance, right?
They would be given, those who are within the legislative distance would be given direct notice, and others presumably might pick it up through our website or social media or newspaper.
Thank you for that. So currently there is a way for outdoor patios, if they wanted to concentrate on music and things like that, they could do it. They could go through their zoning amendment and get it approved for their location.
Or not,
So,
or approved or not.
yeah, well, I think that's where I'm going, is that if the neighbors really don't want it, or that they have some say in it. I am concerned about this. I don't know if, you know, I don't want to restrict it completely, but at the same point, I don't want it to be anything goes between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m. I would feel sorry for the neighbors, particularly if it's heavy metal or something like that, band playing all hours. I know that when Safari, well, I was zoos that time, I had a number of complaints about the when they had the music going there. I actually enjoyed it. And I live a lot more than 20 meters away. And I can remember I could hear the person speaking. I could hear the music, and I could hear it like, do you want to hear it one more time or something? I mean, I could open my window and I could actually hear them speaking, and I lived probably about a half a mile from it. And I had many complaints about the noise, but again, at 9 o'clock, they were diligent at turning it off, or 10 o'clock, whatever time it was. They were very, very good at turning it off. And we did ask them to turn it down, and they did turn it down and things like that. So they're very compliant with the, with the neighborhood, but it did pose a problem. But luckily they were very compliant. So I do have concerns about this, and I'm not hearing any solutions. So,
well, this was the report, the information report to council, and so the staff has heard comments that are being made, and I'm sure they'll take that into account when they come back. Councillor Lubberts, something new?
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Mr. Vanderveen, can you just explain what are the benefits to the town by removing the minimum lot area and removing the minimum floor area requirements?
Mr. Vanderveen?
That's a section 14.3 and 31.5, I think.
Through Mayor Redekop to Councillor Lubberts, in regard to the residential multiple one zone?
Yeah, that there one for one. What are the benefits to the town?
I think it offers the town more flexibility on development approval on lots that would have less than 4,000 square meters, which is 1 acre. So as long as it has an amount of units comparable to what we have in our official plan or secondary plan for density in terms of units per hectare, then we can modify that section accordingly and approve it, as opposed to just having a flat 4,000 square meter requirement throughout the town.
Councillor Lubberts, anything further?
Yeah, and what about the floor area requirement? What's the benefit to the town?
Would that be for the
yeah, the next one below that, various residential zone?
Oh, okay,
the minimum
right.
floor area requirement for single detached dwellings in the A zones and RU, RR, R1, WR, and WRR zones.
Yeah, the intent of that is to allow for some more flexibility in those zones. They have rather large minimum floor areas, so it would allow people to construct dwellings that are a little bit smaller, as I mentioned earlier, and they would still be required to meet the Ontario Building Code regulations. But we have basically all those zones where they're requiring a minimum floor area of 1,200 to 1,500 square feet for a new dwelling across the board. That's the minimum, so you have to go that size or larger. And I think Mayor Redekop touched on this. It would help housing affordability and allow for some more flexibility if we allowed people to construct smaller dwellings in those zones.
Councillor Lubberts?
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor of receiving this for information purposes? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to the proposed zoning amendment, a bylaw amendment for 323 Central Avenue. Do I have a mover? Councillor Mcdermott? That bylaw, that report is on the floor for any questions or comments. No questions or comments? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Unopposed, that is carried. That then takes us to PDS 07-2022, which is the report relative to the 271 Ridgeway Road or the Crystal Beach Fire Hall. Do I have a mover? Councillor Butler? Any questions or comments with respect to the report? Okay, I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. If there are no questions or comments, all those in favor of the recommendation? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to new business or inquiries. Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I'm just wondering, how would we go about asking the developers or come up with some criteria for stormwater management ponds so that they fit the, our desire to make them more of an asset in park-like? How can we go about informing our developers that that's something we would look at very fondly on as opposed to the a fenced in?
That is entirely within our domain. We have the ability to manage that. And Mr. Waltz, correct me if I'm wrong, was there a motion that was passed some time ago and staff is working on some policies with respect to stormwater management ponds?
I think it's, this should be directed to Alex. I hate throwing him under the bus here. There was a motion and I know we're looking at it. Alex would have, may have more information on that.
Okay, yeah, I thought the stormwater management ponds was in infrastructure services, but it could be planning.
The operation is with my department. In the development phase, it's with planning and development services.
Okay, Mr. Hurlovich, you have been thrown under the bus. Sorry.
Yeah.
Hope you're of strong constitution.
Thank you, Your Worship. We do have a municipal policy on storm ponds now with respect to how large or the slope of the ponds dictates whether or not we are going to fence them. So certainly we can look at that policy. The larger the less slope on the pond, the more land we need in order to accommodate that that feature, and so therefore it does consume more land. Consuming land does add to the cost of housing and some other elements. It reduces the amount of table land. Certainly in some cases the storm ponds exist separate from parkland, but where they are part of the parkland, they're much easier to integrate because then we have more land. So we can look at that policy again, but we do have a policy and it does pertain to the steepness of the slopes.
Councillor Noyes, I do believe that there was a motion passed some time ago. I'm going to ask the clerk to follow up on that, just to because I'm pretty confident that it was done, and if it wasn't done, I intended to do it. But I'm confident that we passed that maybe 4 or 5 months ago. Councillor Noyes, back to you.
And I know that we did pass something on stormwater management plans, but I thought it was more towards the maintenance of it as opposed to the creation of whether they should have a 5% slope or a 10% slope. Because if it's a 5% slope, you're going to get a fence. If it's a 10% slope, it can be open. But I could be wrong on that. But I thought the bylaw was more about maintaining it.
Well, when we get the, when the clerk has had a chance to look into that, hopefully we'll get that well before the 28th. And so if there's something that needs to be done further by motion, we can put that on the floor at that time.
Okay, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other new business or inquiries? Business status report for planning. Looks like a busy March 21st. Any questions or comments about the business status report? If none, then I'm going to conclude the planning and development services portion of this meeting and move to infrastructure services and give the floor to Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Infrastructure Services is now in session. We have a delegation this evening. Riley Todd, head crossing guard in regards to Vision Zero program, report IS 01-2022. Riley, is she available?
I'm sorry. So you're now watching this? So we don't see Riley Todd in the, yeah, okay, he may have given up waiting.
Our clerk has her
Madam
hand
Clerk.
up.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, Your Worship, and through you to the chair. As it happens, I did receive late this afternoon a copy of Riley Todd's speaking notes, if you'd like me to read them. He may have had trouble getting into the meeting.
I think
it was his first time.
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate. Chair, do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Mayor and members of Town Council, thank you for allowing me to speak to you this evening on the subject of placing a speed camera within the community safety zone on Central Avenue. As the crossing guard at Our Lady of Victory for the past 14 years, I witness on a daily basis aggressive driving and irresponsible speeding through my crosswalk, which is located directly in front of the elementary school and within the community safety zone. Since the Niagara Regional Police have not been proactive in respect to the enforcement of our ambitions to curtail speeding through these zones, I was happy to hear that plans were being made to have a speed camera installed. I was then disappointed to learn that council may delay or even cancel its installation. Do you know why a significant number of drivers continue to speed through our community safety zone? They know there is nothing or no one at that location to enforce the law and penalize bad driving behavior. I had spoken with many NRP officers and they all acknowledged that there is a serious problem with speeding vehicles between Gilmore Avenue and Birdie Street. But then at that point, the conversation ends. It seems to me that if the professionals are not in a position to enforce the traffic laws in our community safety and school zones, it's then up to us to come up with something constructive. Unfortunately, prior attempts to curb speeding through this area have failed. NRP with radar, too visible, no benefits. NRP parked at the school, too visible, no benefits. Speed limit signs going northbound, ignored. Did you know there are no speed limit signs going south on Central between Wintermute and the water tower? Signs identifying the area as a community safety zone with large fines imposed for violations are ignored. Road markings and signage identifying the area as a school zone also ignored. What other traffic calming measures are available towards attempting to reduce the number of speeding motorists through the area? Speed bumps, no value. Bumps would prohibit first responders from making emergency runs through this area. Also, the first snowplow would destroy the bumps. Flashing signs, that shows drivers their current speed, no value. Drivers already ignore other clearly posted signage. Further signage, either put on the roadway or on a pole, will be ignored. What the aggressive driver won't be able to ignore is receiving a letter containing a picture of their vehicle's plate number and a very expensive speeding ticket payable in 30 days. Hit the offending driver where it hurts most, the pocketbook. Penalties also go beyond what a driver pays in fines. A speeding ticket also impacts the driver's insurance costs and/or policy continuance, and perhaps to the present or future validity of their license to drive a motor vehicle. One council member has stated that more study is needed to move forward. I hope the study will include values such as the economic income received by the town, the region, and municipality through paid fines, a reduction in current exposure to accidents and deaths as a result of aggressive driving behavior. The economic cost of a single road fatality is a huge sum. Studies is huge. Some studies bring the expenses to over $2 million per death when you factor in the cost of police, fire, ambulance, and hospital services, lost earnings to an employer and to the household of the deceased, possible government support needed by the family left behind, insurance claims, possible legal actions against the town, region, municipality in which the death occurred. We don't need an automated speed enforcement unit in our community safety zone 12 months of the year. We could begin with a 6-month trial period with appropriate people slicing and dicing the information that would identify its value to the safety of our community and school and support its continuance again at a later date. I would suggest that the placement of the camera be placed to identify vehicles going northbound at a location slightly north of Our Lady of Victory Elementary School. The camera would then identify those drivers speeding not only through the community safety zone, but also deliberately ignoring the posted speed limit through the clearly identified school zone 2. We need enforcement to make the community and school zones safe for everyone. If a speed camera is all the enforcement we can get, use it. See if it works, because to date, nothing else has. Thank you again for your time and permitting me to speak tonight. And that's all, Your Worship. Chair.
Thank you, Riley, and thank you, Madam Clerk. I guess we can't ask any questions of the presenters, so we'll just move forward to the report itself. It was deferred from the previous meeting of January 10th, so we just put it back on the floor. And I'm sure that there's some comments or questions. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Councillor Lubberts. I'm very pleased with the report. It gives us the information that we need in regards to how effective it is, and it's a very well done report. I want to thank the person who pulled it together. She did a lot of work on it. It really explains the pros and the cons of it, and it really emphasizes how it does make a difference in saving lives and slowing traffic down. So I'm very much in support of the Vision Zero safety program now that I have more information on the benefits of it, which was severely, in my opinion, lacking in the regional report. The regional report tended to concentrate on the amount of money that was going to be generated, not on the effectiveness of the program itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Noyes. Any other comments or questions? I don't see any. I just had a couple of questions. I don't know who could answer them. I was assuming that the region could answer, but maybe Madam Clerk, you got your hand up?
Yes, I do, Chair. We do have a couple of members from the region in the waiting room. If there are questions you need to ask.
Okay, all right. Can we bring them in?
Yes, Janine, can you bring them in, please?
Oh, I see someone there. Yes. All right, just on page 1 of the report, right at the beginning there, it says, near the end of the page, second to last paragraph, there's no direct cost for the program to the town of Fort Erie at this time. Is there costs anticipated in the future, and what would those costs be? I'm not hearing anything. If you're talking, I can't hear.
Good evening. Through the chair, to confirm, there will be no costs incurred by the municipality.
At this time?
At this time and in the future.
Oh, there won't be? Okay. And then on, I think page 8. When we had discussion, can the town request as to where these cameras will be placed? Because I remember when we had this report earlier in January, we raised that. I think that question was raised, but my understanding was they were going to be put in the safety zone, and we only have one safety zone. So does that mean the town of Fort Erie is only going to have one camera?
So through the chair, so for the launch of the program, we're starting out with 4 automated speed enforcement pieces of equipment that we will be rotating across the current 13 approved community safety zones. So that's for the beginning phase of the program. The IMA changes, the intermunicipal agreement changes that are before you as part of the staff report, talk to a period of time up to 3 years that we will be assessing how this program is working. The intent is to provide annual updates back to regional council. We're happy to provide those updates to each of the municipal partners as well to the success of what we're seeing in the roadways with the intent to expand the program. So it's a partnership with each of the municipalities. We'll be working to understand where other issues are occurring, not just on the regional road network, on the municipal streets. And as we continue to evolve the program based on the data collection, the intent is to expand it, working on key sensitive areas.
Yes, I get that, but so you got 4 cameras to get started with, and you're gonna rotate those 4 cameras throughout the region?
So through the chair, so the 4 pieces of equipment, ASC, will be rotated to start across the 13 approved community safety zones identified on the regional road network.
Okay, all right.
Yes,
So
there is one in Fort Erie, and the ASC will be rotated to that location for the start of the implementation of the program.
yeah, and the one that's the one safety zone that we've identified in Fort Erie is where the delegate that the clerk read out is a crossing guard on that's on Central Avenue by Our Lady of Victory School, right? So I get what I'm trying to get at is,
yes, Central Avenue.
yeah. So what I'm trying to get at is, this is what the program's going to entail. So that is going to be the only place where this camera is going to be set up, or this tool is going to be set up. When it comes to rotating into Fort Erie, it's going to be there, and we don't have any input as to, well, we'd like to have a camera at One Municipal Drive or somewhere in Stevensville.
So through the chair, for the start of the program, it will be only placed at Central Avenue. The intent of the program, though, is as we expand, to expand the program to other locations. That's both regional and municipal as we work in partnership with the 12 local area municipalities. So we're only starting the program off on a small basis so we can assess it and get it running.
Okay, so then my second question is, when it expands, does the municipality have any input as to where the tools will be placed, or is that going to be strictly up to the region?
So through the chair, so there will be a stakeholders working group that will be formed between the region and the municipalities. And those discussions will be part of that working stakeholders group. So there will be consultation, again, based on criteria, what we're seeing with the analysis, areas of concern. So that will be part of those dialogues as we move the program forward, absolutely.
Yes, so what I guess what I'm trying to get at is, if, let's say you bring all your criteria, you bring all your data, and you go into your meeting room and you realize that, okay, we're going to expand, we're going to put another camera or another tool in Fort Erie. So now we're going to have 2 tools in Fort Erie. Can Fort Erie say, well, we'd like to have it in front of the high school on Garrison Road? Or will that decision only be made by the region, or can we say this is where we'd like to have that extra machine?
So through the chair, that will be, as we prepare, again, the working relationship around the program with municipalities, that consultation will be on the table because there's going to be numerous locations. Many municipalities are going to want to put the equipment. So it just comes down to, again, how we're going to come to the consensus on criteria, locations, sensitivity, and what we're trying to balance with areas with the halo effect of the safety. So we, again, that's implementation that's further down the road. We're here just wanting to get the program launched. Those conversations will evolve as we work with all of our partners. The intent is to expand it to locations of concern that the municipalities will be speaking in partnership with the region on.
Yeah, okay, so sounds to me like we won't make that decision. That decision will be made by someone else. We will just be part of the conversation. That's fine. Okay, any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I guess we'll call the question. All those in favor of the report? I can't see. Councillor Mcdermott.
Both I and Councillor McDermott voted in the affirmative.
Okay, that carries. That brings us to new business and inquiries. Any inquiries from council? Councillor Noyes? You're muted.
Sorry about that. It's about regarding the third access that we're looking for in the Black Creek Douglastown area. The feasibility of it. I'm just wondering where we are in that process, and do we have, what's our anticipated, do we know yet when we may be getting a report coming forward to for council to look at in regards to where this may, if and where this may occur?
Who would tackle that, Mr. Walsh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're expecting the 75% draft later this week. It'll go through some iterations and reviews. We expect to have that report before council in May or June.
Councilor Noyes?
Thank you.
Any other new business or inquiries? Councilor McDermott, anything?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, that takes us to the business status report. Any comments or questions? I don't see or hear from anybody. And infrastructure services is now in recess. Mayor Redekop, I'll hand the chair back to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lubberts. And Councillor Butler, I just noticed in my mail that you had offered to chair planning. I apologize. I'm still about 20 emails behind, but had I had a chance to check, you can rest assured I would have more than happily had you chair that meeting. Anyways, that now takes us to corporate services. Councillor McDermott.
Thank you, Worship. Corporate and Community Services is now in session. We have a couple of presentations tonight, starting with Gary Bergman. If we could bring him in. If you would unmute and put your video on, we could get rolling here.
There we go. There we go.
Yes.
Welcome.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay, can I start?
Yes, you may
Hello?
start.
Yes. Okay, Mayor Redekop, councilors. I our family owns a property on 370 Beechwood Ave. And we've had it since 1998 in the fall. And this is to talk about the Glen Olden Road. We've maintained it now for 23 years, cutting the lawn. We've taken 2 trees down. We did call the town to take them down, and they said they didn't have time. So we took the trees down, they had fallen. And I left a $200 deposit, I guess, at the town of Fort Erie. They said if you wanted to purchase it, put a $200 deposit on it. That was in 2002, 20 years ago. So, and we understand that the road has a sewer trunk in it. It can never be built on. That's understandable. And we, no problem with agreeing to it. But we've had a couple of problems come up and arise. The beach access, people go to the beach and there's no alcohol allowed on the beach. So they'll come back and and sit in their cars and they'll drink. And then they drive right through Glen Olden. And one time, 2 incidences, my grandkids, the car missed them about 3 feet, 4 feet. Because Glen Olden almost borders our cottages. It borders right near the cottages, the Glen Olden access. So I don't know if there's any way we could erect a fence, and I'll pay for it at the end of, in line with our Beechwood property, in the back of it. That way they can't drive through, because every summer they drive through. And I know the beach does not allow drinking, but they circumvent that by going to their cars and driving through anyway. So that's about it. That's what I wanted to present.
Okay, just hang in there. We'll see if we have any comments or questions from council.
All right.
Any questions of Mr. Bergman? Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bergman, you're saying that you would ask that we put a fence up. Would you be okay with bollards instead of a fence, like posts?
I'll pay for the fence. I'll pay for the fence, and I was thinking of a wood fence.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't require. I don't know that I would want a fence because I do know that when I used to live in the area.
Right.
Glen Olden was a nice, I guess, a shortcut route to get into other parts of Bay Beach. So I would, if anything, I would like to see bollards and then just allow for pedestrian use and not allow for any vehicles.
Well, I'd be agreeable to that. If I have access to bollards, and there'd be room for people to walk through, drive their bicycles through. I have no problem. It's just to keep cars going through.
I get what you're saying.
There's an accident waiting to happen, and they come in there, they throw their beer cans, they peel through the grass, and if they see bollards, they're not gonna. Of course, they can't go through.
Yeah.
And yeah. So yeah, I'm in agreement to that.
Okay, I'll bring that up to staff later.
Okay.
Anyone else with comments or questions of Mr. Bergman? Thank you, Mr. Bergman, for your presentation.
Yes, okay. And then will I hear from you? Now, how will I hear from you? If of the decision, is this a go? I can do it?
Well, you can just follow council as we go finish up our night here, and you'll find out.
Okay, sure, I'm good with that. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move on to Next presentation, Thomas R. Merkel with regards to 365 Beechwood Avenue.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, this is Cynthia Johnson. I'm Thomas Merkel's wife. I helped him gather the information you may have gotten as handouts. My husband was trying to bundle with 2 other people to buy the property along Glen Holden so that we could keep it as a green space. And also because that property abuts his cottage. But he, if you could look at, make sure that you were handed those things that I emailed. There should be a Google map, copies of checks that we paid to neighbors over the COVID period to help maintain that property. And my husband has some records that go back many years since he's been trying to purchase that property. So here he is.
Yes, I've been there since the spring of 1970, and I maintained that lot and the bushes on the far side of it for all those years with no help from the town. And I do have my storm sewer goes through the roadway, my gas line goes through the roadway. There's an old concrete pad that was with the cottage that's on the roadway from 1950. The only thing I've added early 70s, I put a framework over the top of that pad and extended out further for a patio area. And when they put the storm sewer in, also I had cars go through, and for public safety, I took the top of my old septic tank, the concrete, and I buried it. So I have pylons to block vehicle traffic for safety. People can walk through, bicycle through, there's all space for that. But I have blocked the cars from coming through because one night a car almost smashed into a car coming down Beechwood, came through the proposed roadway where the mud was. In in 1998, twice I was charged with code enforcement for cleaning up that roadway after a lightning had struck a tree on the far side of it. And I went to see Doug Atkins, and I explained to him that was town property. And he said, well, we know you've been taking care of it all these years. We didn't think you'd mind. So I cleaned up the branches. And then in 2017, I inquired to purchase the roadway. And 2018, well, I put in 2017, wait, it was 95. I'm sorry, 99, I put a $200 deposit to purchase the roadway. In 2017, and I had an inquiry to purchase the roadway, and I put a $300, in 5/24/19, I put $310 deposit for land sale application. And I've got a report also from 3/15/18 from Jeremy Corvar to Daryl Vanderveen, and it says they don't object to the sale. And I have all those copies, but I don't know, I'd like to keep the space green, and it butts right up to the side of my cottage. There is no space. I'm sorry for taking all your time, but that's my proposal. I would like to obtain it and keep it green.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Merkel. Well, I just stand by in case some councilors have questions with regards to your presentation. Is there anybody with any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation tonight.
Okay, thank you for your time. It's been a long evening.
Thank you. Okay, so can I have a mover to CAO report 02 LC 02 2022? Land matters, Your Worship, thank you. Any comments or questions? Your Worship?
Chair.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry. I'm going to support the committee's recommendation with respect to Glen Olden, since we're on that. That can be a walkway and has been considered as such by the staff, and I believe it was part of the secondary plan process. I'm certainly sympathetic to the concerns expressed by both of the delegations this evening on this, and it could very well be that we could do something to make that more of a attractive walkway. Certainly things perhaps to discourage any type of pedestrian traffic over what's otherwise an unopened road allowance that these people have been maintaining to the benefit of the neighborhood and the municipality. The other point that I wanted to address has to do with 390 Derby Road. We'd all received a lengthy recitation from Phil Smith of the work that he's done in Crystal Beach recently with respect to the commercial strip on Derby in particular and on Erie Road. And he's expressed for many, many months an interest in acquiring this property. This issue came up in December. It came up in the meeting on January the 13th. It came up in the meeting that we had, I think, last week. So I would like to, it seems to me that for the work that has been done by Mr. Smith in Crystal Beach of a commercial nature, without any assistance from any community improvement program, and his other long-term vision, which he had shared with us in that letter that he provided to us, I'd like to move that an amendment to this report so that we would receive the minutes and that we would approve the recommendations. But I would like to add a third item, that staff be directed to consult Phil Smith regarding the sale of 390 Derby Road to him at fair market value, as opposed to going to the open market. And that staff report back to council on at our February 28th meeting, February 8th, 2022 meeting. Did you get all that, Madam Clerk?
Any comments or questions about the amendment? Councillor Noyes, and then Councillor Lubberts.
Thank you. Notwithstanding all the good work that Mr. Smith has done, I have a problem with, if we're going to put it up for sale, put it up for sale. And, I don't think there should be a, basically one designated buyer. I think that would set a precedent. So I would think that Mr. Smith would be, if we're putting it up for sale, if he's the lucky owner, if he's the lucky buyer, great. I don't see going off the beaten track, so to speak, and just designating it to one person who wants to buy based on the assessment value, because the assessment value could be quite different than what the actual dollar you may be able to gain from the sale of a property. I know a lot of appraisals are low, come in low, and some of them are doubled than what they actually sell for. So I can't, I don't know how reliable the appraisal are, particularly on this particular area, where the prices of land are quite high. So that's my 2 cents.
Anything further? Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify, I'm not quite sure which lot that is along Derby Road. Is that the one on across from the Royal LePage office?
No, it's You know where Cravings for Jane is?
What?
It's Cravings by Jane, that store?
Yeah, well, is it a corner lot?
Yes. It's a little basic, it's basically a little strip of parking, basically.
Yeah, what corner?
Lincoln Road East. Lincoln Road East.
Lincoln Road East.
Lincoln, yeah, there's the old United Church there. And it's kitty corner to that, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, and he's gonna use that for parking?
My understanding is he wants to build something on it.
He wants to build something on it, apparently.
Oh, okay, all right.
Any other question?
No, that's fine.
Okay, Your Worship?
Yeah, I should have mentioned, and I didn't really have an opportunity to speak to councilors beforehand. The property has been appraised, and before I would have brought this type of motion, I asked Mr. Smith if he was prepared to pay the fair market value based on that appraisal, which seems to be pretty high. He's indicated that he is, but hence the suggestion that there be some discussions by staff with him before we get a recommendation, and staff may have some other comments that they want to make with respect to this. This is a resolution that they consult him with respect to this, and it is at fair market value. So it doesn't mean that we're going to do that tonight, but it would put this on the road in that direction. So I hear Councillor Noyes' comments. I appreciate that. But that's some additional information.
Okay, so Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, what's the size of that property?
I couldn't tell you right off.
The staff, anybody on
Maybe
staff?
Mr. Hurlbedge?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I do not have the dimensions of that property just here with me.
Okay. Councillor Lubberts still has the floor. So it's a very small piece of property, let me tell you. I couldn't tell you what the dimensions are, to be quite frank.
Yeah, I know a few years ago, Mr. Smith came forward. He wanted, actually at that time, he wanted the town to turn it into a parking lot. So we had more parking down in the Derby Road area. But obviously things have changed. And there's a lot of things that have changed down there. And yeah, we'll have to see.
Anything further, Councillor Lubberts? Councillor Noyes. You're muted.
Wasn't Mr. Smith not that long ago looking for parking spots and wanting to use some of the town parking lot for some of his existing establishments already? Am I correct on that?
Your Worship?
Yeah, that was the parcel down on Erie Road behind the old Derby Hotel.
And he was, at that point, he was looking at buying other property if the town wasn't going to, kind of give him parking spots on town-owned parking lots. And then he would then basically bus or ferry people from property he owned to the parking spot and back and forth to his other establishments. So I'm surprised that when I first heard that he wanted it, I thought he was going to make it into a parking lot to address some of his concerns about the need for parking of his own establishments. But I hear that's not the case. How does this fit with our purchasing and selling of land process? I thought if we were going to sell town-owned land, we had to give first dibs basically to the abutting property owners. We just basically waive that, or is Mr. Smith the abutting property owner? I don't know.
So I think he may be the abutting property owner. I'm not clear on that, but I think he is. And I just want to make it clear that I think he intends to build on that. He may intend to use that for parking. I apologize. I didn't clarify that. That's something that I thought should be part of what staff discusses with Mr. Smith.
The lot is directly beside one of his buildings, so I guess it would be abutted to his building.
Again, I'm still of the belief that if it's it should be open to the public.
Anything further?
Nope.
Anything more from you? Nope. Okay, so we'll vote on the amendment and then we'll move on here. All in favor of the mayor's amendment? Against? Carried. So we'll move on to CAO 02 LC 02 2022 as amended. Oh, I'm sorry. Madam Clerk, what did I mess up?
Yes, Chair, can we vote on the report as amended? We just
Yes.
voted on the amendment.
Yes.
Yeah, can we ask more questions on the report?
Yes. As soon as I just want to get this portion out so we can get to the other part of the act here. So we did, right?
Yeah, but no, that's the amended, that's the amendment.
That was the amendment.
Yeah,
So
so
now
the
we can
rest of
move on to the
is
report.
Still open for questions, right?
Yes. And you might as well start it off.
Yeah, okay. On page 2 of the minutes, the response from North Shore Drive, they were talking about someone has built the wall and it's on town property. And I guess they're saying that they've had that on their property for 90 years, but they want to move the wall moved back to their property line. And Mr. Chair, you know, we've gone over our waterfront for years, and we've been working on encroachments. And there was some encroachments along Waverly Beach, Waverly area, and we mitigated those. And I was under the impression at the time that we were going to work our way down the shoreline and address the encroachments that that are on the lake. And I'm just wondering if we can get staff to bring forward a report on all the encroachments that we have, and if there's some kind of plan in place to address them. And, you know, we'll go down one at a time because, you know, we keep bringing them up one at a time, an encroachment here, an encroachment there. And I think it's time that we address all the encroachments along our shoreline. Instead of just having knee-jerk reactions to it, let's get it out there and let's you know, fix them up.
Your Worship.
Well, I don't think that, I think that that's an excellent idea, Councillor Lubberts. The problem is I don't think that this is the time to do it. We don't have a full-time director of planning. We have an acting director of planning. We're about to lose our manager of planning development. We're still trying to find a senior planner. So we're significantly depleted in our planning department, and they would be the people that would be putting this information together. So I would suggest, or I would hope that you would agree that we can wait to get this information so that we can have a unified approach, as I made reference to during the minutes, of dealing with potential encroachments. But right now, the staff, as you know, is short of personnel and significantly burdened with work.
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with that. I just want it on record that we need to address this. So when the time's right, I think that we need to put together a plan. We have a waterfront strategy plan. And in order to implement that waterfront strategy plan, I think we need to address our encroachments as well. So before we do anything with our waterfront strategy, hopefully we'll address these encroachments. And if I may, Mr. Chair, on page 5 of the report, the number 4, the disposition of the fire stations 4 and 6. First of all, the committee brought forward a motion that they sever the property in Ridgeway so that they can have a separate piece of parcel, and then they declare the land surplus and sell it. But over the last few years, I've had some discussions with some of the residents in town. And one of the problems that we have is we have a museum that's small, and we have a lot of artifacts in the town of Fort Erie that we're storing at the old Lucidol building. And we have nowhere to display some of our artifacts that we have in the town of Fort Erie. And I would think that before we approve this here recommendation, that we remove this recommendation from this report as far as the Ridgeway Fire Hall goes, and have some discussion with the museum board and some of our shared stakeholders in town, and have some discussion about keeping that building and using that to display some of our artifacts from the town of Fort Erie. So I'd like to make the motion that we remove the, that we not include the fire station in Ridgeway in this report.
That, Your Worship?
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether a more appropriate amendment of the report is that the portion of recommendation number 4 in the minutes be deferred until staff has had an opportunity to have discussions with the museum board.
Councillor Lubberts, would that suit your purpose?
Well, yeah, that would work, but the problem is I still would like to see the property severed. And that's part of the part of the motion to sever it. I don't want to delay the severance.
I'm sorry. So I've perhaps missed the thrust of what you're trying to accomplish.
Well,
you want the building retained.
Severance of 398 Ridge Road North from the larger portion of at 402 Ridge Road North. So from what I understand, the Ridgeway Fire Hall is part of the property package from the old town works yard. So they have to sever that portion off. They have to sever off the old fire hall because they're working on doing something with the old town yard. They're doing some work on there, and I think they want to sell that as well. So I don't want to interfere with the severance. I'd like to see the severance continue going, but I don't want them to put the Ridgeway Fire Station up for sale at this time. So if we somehow we got to take maybe the second that, remove the second that.
No, if I might, Madam Clerk, if I might, Mr. Chair, is 398 the fire hall and 402 the museum?
Yes, your worship.
So, yeah, okay. So the severance, does that help,
Laura,
Councillor Lubberts?
I thought 402 was the yard, the old yard. The old, you know, the Bertie Township maintenance yard.
One moment.
That may actually have a Prospect Point Road address. I'm not sure about that. But the Google Maps says that the museum is 402 Ridge Road North.
Okay, well,
As
if
does
that's the
Madam
case,
Clerk.
then yeah, I guess you're defer it then. I would prefer that's right, then we can defer it. That's fine with me, but I think we need to talk about that.
I guess my question is, Councillor Lubberts, is that we made a commitment to the taxpayers here that we were going to sell the two buildings, to make up for the shortfalls. So, I mean, that would cut into our shortfall money now, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but I don't think the town of Fort Erie is broke. I don't think this is gonna hurt the town of Fort Erie. This is gonna benefit the town of Fort Erie, Mr. Chair. You know, we have artifacts that we should be sharing with the residents of Fort Erie. You can't put a value on that for the people to be able to go to a museum and be able to look at the artifacts. And we could even, while we're doing that, we could maybe have a place where they can make donations to the museum or donations to the town. There's all kinds of things that we can do, but we can't do anything with the artifacts when they're sitting in a storage room deteriorating. And then they deteriorate to the point where they're not even worth displaying. I think we need to have that discussion. That's all I'm saying.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor Mcdermott. And I don't know if Fire Chief can weigh in here on the condition of that building in regards to the cost to repair or refit it so that it can be used for another purpose. I don't recall the background on the condition of this building and what it requires to upgrade it or to, let's say, make it a usable place for the museum or for anything.
Worship? Do you have any more? Okay.
Is Ed frozen?
So, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I was just waiting to be directed.
Okay, go ahead, Fire Chief.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Noyes. Mr. Walsh might be able to help me with numbers, but I certainly know that we have not put any significant capital into that building. We decided once council had passed the news station, future fixes like windows and other things that needed to be done there stopped. So in the funding report that I did 4 years ago about the council passed, in there was the savings that we would have in capital from not putting them into that station, or for that matter, Station 6. And then the savings were to go towards offsetting the cost of building the new station. So I can't remember the number, but there is a capital number associated with what we would save by not fixing that station up.
Anything further?
Are you talking to Fire Chief or myself?
To you, Councillor Noyes.
Okay.
I was going to go to Jonathan to see if he would like to add to that, if you don't mind. Okay.
Sure.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I would just add that this has been part of our capital budget plan since I think the initial design and all the scoping was done in 2019. So this is something that staff have certainly been aware of a long time. And like Ed said, you know, the cost factors have been considered with our operating budgets already. And certainly the sale of these properties is something that's been reported on a couple times as recently as February of 2021, where we adjusted the budget based on the sale of these. So it's something that staff, and I believe even museum staff have been aware of, and that is something that was been planned on and as well supported by Land Committee.
Back to me?
Yep, back to you.
Okay. Thank you for that. I guess the other question I have is that it was many years ago, and I can't give you a number, whether it's a decade ago or so, that the town put in a lot of money into the building where a lot of the artifacts are being held now. I can't remember the exact number, but we even put climate control and everything else. So I'm a bit concerned that perhaps money that we spent there, is there a problem? Because I know that we've put a great deal of money into that building for climate control to maintain the artifacts. And so I'm not sure. I guess from Councillor Lubberts that that's not sufficient, or it's not as good as it should be.
From what I understand, Councillor Noyes, is the Mentholatum building, that area, that thing there is basically to preserve the stuff that we have, the way that it's set up. And then I believe Jane was rotating things in and out from time to time, from there over to there and back, so that they could go on display. I don't deny the fact that the museum's small. I got that. We got that. But I just wonder if the fire hall is actually the place for that.
Well, and I think that's kind of where I was going, Councillor Mcdermott, is that I do think that was the purpose of doing the mentholated building and putting the money we did into it, so that we could maintain the artifacts and basically trade them in and out, so to speak, but they would be protected. I was a bit concerned about the comment that the artifacts are not being well cared for, I guess is the term I would use. So if that's the case, I would like to know.
Yeah. Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yeah, as far as preserving some of the artifacts at the Mentholatum building, my understanding, and I've been in that building several times over the years as a town electrician, and I think that when we're talking about the room that we're for the preservation of some of the artifacts, that is a room that was there that we were allowed to do that, but not the entire building is not climate controlled. So it's just certain areas. There are other artifacts. And the thing is, we got to remember, the Mentholatum building is not our building. We're using that. I think it's owned by the Peace Bridge Authority. And we're using that area, and we know as well as anybody, one day it'll be gone. And our museum is small, and everybody knows that. We have nowhere to display our artifacts. And Jane Davies, yes, you're right. She'll take some artifacts out of the museum, take them back to the Mentholatum building, bring some into the museum. But it's a very small area in that museum. There's not much room to display anything. And that's the problem that we have at the town of Fort Erie. So when the day comes that the Mentholatum building is not available anymore, the town of Fort Erie is going to be faced with having to buy or provide a place for these artifacts to be put. And that's going to cost a lot more money then than it will now if we sit down and look at that building and make another discussion about maybe we can use that for some of our artifacts. But I guess if our history doesn't mean anything to council, then, we'll just allow the artifacts to sit in storage and nobody be able to enjoy our past or our history. But my motion is on the floor that we defer that report, that part of the report. And Mr. Chair, you can go forward from there.
Thank you. Do you want to comment before I call that?
Yeah, I do. I want to say, number one, that I'm very concerned and interested in the history of this community, the heritage, and all that's gone on here. And frequently I speak about the vast array of history of this community. I agree that we should be displaying as many artifacts as we possibly can, and that the old Birdie Township Hall is very small and doesn't really accommodate a great deal. I don't know that putting artifacts in a building that isn't accessible to many people because of the stairs, unless an elevator were put in, is going to get us where we need to go. I think if we're serious about displaying the history and heritage of this community, we look to a facility that actually does permit us to display it in a favorable light. This is not, the sale of these two fire stations is not something that's just cropped up overnight. This has been on the agenda for a number of months, and now in the final stages of trying to sell these properties, we're asked to defer the sale so that we can put historical artifacts in them. I'm sympathetic with Councillor Lubberts' view of the need for us to display our history and our artifacts. I'm not supportive of further delaying the disposition of this particular fire hall, because I don't think that it's the appropriate place, and I don't think it really allows us to put our best foot forward. So I'd be much more inclined to be looking at a project down the road that would allow us to actually acquire or build a facility that permits us to better display the magnificent history of this area. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lubberts? And then
Yes,
Councillor,
thank you.
just one second, Councillor Lubberts. So Councillor Butler hasn't spoken yet, so this is our opportunity. I'll come back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I happen to agree with the mayor in he put it into perfect perspective, you know, and I agree with Councillor Lubberts. We need to have some place that we can put our history on showcase, and it sure would be a tourist attraction, but I do not agree that that the fire hall is the appropriate place. I agree with the mayor that a much more suitable place that's accessible for all people is requiring more thought. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Lubberts? And
Yes,
then we're going to vote
thank
on
you,
your amendment.
Mr. Chair. Just maybe I should remind everybody that it wasn't long ago when our curator was suggesting that that fire hall might be used as an addition to the museum to display artifacts. So I know that the curator did at one time think that it was a good fit, and so that's just my thoughts, my comments on the fire hall not being a good spot. And as far as, you know, this has been on the books for many, many months. There's a lot of things that were on the books for a long, long time. Things change. You know, we just witnessed something that's changed on a piece of property that someone wants to purchase, right? And it was going to be a parking lot. Now they're going to build on it. So, you know, things change. And I think it's worth sitting down and having the discussion with the stakeholders and the museum board and see if there's something that can be done. I know that if you want to talk about the financials and stuff, well, included in those conversations would be how can we use that facility to raise funds, you know, when we're displaying our artifacts and different things. So, you know, finance is one thing, but raising funds and doing things with the building to bring the money back so that we recover some of the costs, then I think it's worth the talk, but we'll see.
Anything further?
No, that's it.
Okay, so we'll vote on Councillor Lubberts' amendment.
Sure. Before we do that, can we hear what the amendment is?
Yes. Madam Clerk?
So this postponement relates to recommendation number 4 of the Land Committee minutes, so that it would be to postpone that part of the second recommendation of recommendation number 4, redeclaring Fire Station 4 surplus, until staff have had an opportunity to discuss the use of Fire Station 4 with the museum and stakeholders.
Okay with that, Your Worship? Yep. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's defeated. So we'll move on to back to land matters. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Councillor Mcdermott. It's about the Holloway Bay Road ownership dispute. I happened to notice on Facebook, someone sent me something about the city of Port Colborne having a consultation with the public studying north-south roads, I'm just reading it, that terminate at Lake Erie, and one of the roads is Holloway Bay Road. And the report's available for feedback until Monday, February 21st, which is coming up, and I'm not sure if we as a town are going to comment on it. I'm pretty sure we own the road, but they're having a public consultation for Colborne about what they should do with the road, or the number of roads, the accesses to the beach there. Would there be any point in us getting the consultant report to read what the consultant has said about Holloway Bay Road?
Your Worship?
Not really. It's pretty clear. We've got surveyor and legal advice with respect to who owns that road. It's pretty clear that the municipality of the town of Fort Erie owns it. And I think this is one of those animals that's dying hard. I don't think Port Colborne wants to acknowledge it. I believe that Mr. Walsh last told me that we actually maintain the whole road in any event and have for some time. So I don't know, the city of Port Colborne can do what they want with their consultations, but this may be a carryover. They may have started this process before it came to light that the town of Fort Erie actually owns the entire road. But I don't see any benefit in us looking at their material unless one is curious about it.
I just thought that I had a conversation a few weeks ago with Mr. Walsh that we owned Holloway Bay Road. So I was surprised to see it on Facebook that Port Colborne was having a consultation on that road. Now, do we have any no parking signs on Holloway Bay Road?
Mr. Walsh?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Port Colborne tried to erect some last summer. We promptly took them down when we realized they were up.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. In regards to that, that same part of the minutes, Holloway Bay Road, I guess it was our lawyer was going to have a call on January 20th. And does anybody know what the results of that call was?
Jonathan?
To you, Chair, to Councillor Lubberts. It was a subject at our last meeting when those minutes will be coming forward, I believe, at the February 28th council meeting. So there should be an update for it at that point. I believe there's been some delays, but I can't recall off the top of my head right now.
But they had the phone call on January 20th?
I believe there was contact, yeah.
Okay, well, we don't know the results of it yet.
No, you'll know, there'll be more available in the next set of minutes.
Okay, all right. And then on number 12, same page, number 12, the water lot attributes. The mayor at the meeting said that there were, advised that there was further details about water lot attributes. What water lots were we talking about?
Your worship?
So let me, I believe that was a water lot at the end of, and maybe someone else who was on the land committee can recall, but I think it was at the end of Windmill Point Road or that vicinity. And this again was the subject of discussion at the land committee meeting last week. And there may have been a recommendation in there. To be honest with you, I can't recall, but I know that there was going to be some further work done with respect to the possibility that there may have been some type of reservation of property, because there was some conflicting information that what's her position, Madam Clerk? What is Ms. Ferenza's position?
She's our law clerk, Your Worship.
Our law clerk. She had been able to find some discrepancy, and so it looks like there may be a need for some further research, but that will be reflected in the minutes that will be, I believe, on our February 28th agenda.
Councillor Lubberts?
Oh, all right, okay. I thought it was you that received the details, and you gave them to the law clerk. That's what it says in the minutes. I was just wondering what the details were.
Yeah, I received a map or a land grant, which I passed on to the law clerk for her further review.
Oh, so we'll get them with the minutes at another council meeting?
February the 28th, the minutes of last week's land committee meeting will be on the agenda.
And this information will be in there, I'm assuming?
I haven't seen the minutes. There was some discussion about it, and I can't recall whether there was a specific recommendation emanating from that discussion or not, but it will be referred to there,
Okay.
and
All right.
there'll be an opportunity, I'm sure, for you to ask further questions.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, so is there anything at all left to discuss about land matters this evening? Okay, then we'll vote on this. So we're voting on this as amended because we did amend it earlier tonight. So all in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Anything under new business inquiries? Seeing none, anything about business status report? Seeing none, back to you, Your Worship.
Now, thank you very much, Councillor Mcdermott. I have to say that I'm much more impressed by the business status report of corporate services than I am of the others. Scheduling of meetings. Are there any meetings that anyone wishes to? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. There's a traffic coordinating committee meeting on Wednesday, the 23rd at 12 p.m. I would imagine it's via Zoom.
Okay. Any other meetings that anyone wishes to announce? Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. So in the absence of Councillor Dubanow, can I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Mcdermott, your hand went up so fast I almost missed it. That was all those in favor? That is carried. Good night.